What?
For real.
No, it's crazy.
Episode 83. I can't believe that.
Remember the first one?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, J-Rob.
Yep, old Johnny.
I mean, I remember the first verse. That's the episode people are listening to.
Yeah. The Vault.
If you ever listen to The Vault, it means we truly love you.
Yeah, or you paid us a lot of money, won't you?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of money.
And you signed a contract to never let our parents hear it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like that first episode was so long ago.
I think we should have a Vault listening party, you know, where we bring...
Just sell tickets?
Yeah, maybe that's what our next fundraiser is.
Sell
is
tickets.
We sell tickets to the Vault listening party.
To hear the Whiskey Bro Vault, and then we
man.
have no friends left after that.
It's true.
Or-
Yeah.
Or it's just us three shows up for the party.
I can't.
Nobody shows up.
I can't even talk about what we talked about. Like that's how inappropriate it was.
Yeah.
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 We've got several in the vault now, I think.
Yeah, like
That
three,
was-
right?
Yeah.
3 or 4, yeah.
But then we had our first bona fide episode that got, put out on the public airwaves with J-Rob.
That one was a J.
I look back and was like, man, we had no clue what we were doing. We
Yeah.
still don't.
Yeah, I was
We
gonna
still
say.
don't. We're better at it now.
You're just trying, huh?
Yeah.
Here's an idea. It's like every once in a while we like record a Vault episode just for that purpose. And,
Just
and
to-
you
just
know,
to
it'd
keep
be
it-
like,
This coming from the guy that has to do absolutely no work except for talk.
Yeah, that's true.
That's right.
Hey, all the work you guys did tonight with punching the buttons
Just
and
throw it in
recording
there.
everything and editing, put it in the vault.
I put a lot of homework in this.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
on this episode.
This episode for sure.
Are these
like-
mostly your notes then?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, a lot of 'em.
Look at you go.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Well, I'm going to let Savage take it
Awesome.
from here and introduce our guest tonight.
Boy, I'm
Yeah.
excited too.
And I'm going to do a very easy job at introducing our guests. I'm gonna say your name that I know, and then
Yeah.
you're going to tell us what your actual name is. But
Well, they're all my actual names.
you're
so-
all your names, right?
So,
And our guest,
Yeah.
the guest tonight is a good friend of mine that I met up with the chief, and Reuben is his name. But tell us your all your names there.
my full name is really simple. It's Reouhidi
Reouhidi
Reuben
Reuben.
Ndjerareou.
See, now you lost me.
Yeah.
You lost me there.
I can't even
All
say
right.
that.
Like you can see, this comes from my language, and we can talk about
J-Rob.
how names are very important
Oh, yeah.
within the African context.
For sure. Yeah,
If you gave you my name and you landed in Chad and say my name, they will tell you what part of the country I'm from.
Oh, no
Oh,
kidding.
wow.
And they can tell you what my tribe is.
It's not like Texas. It's like,
Right.
I'm here to meet Bill. And they're like,
Yeah.
There's tons of,
I don't know, maybe try Odessa.
yeah, and Ndjerareou is not a very common name. So Reouhidi
Reouhidi.
means simply the road keeps growing
Okay.
Okay.
because I'm the firstborn. I have
Okay.
2 brothers
okay.
and 2 sisters. And my grandfather gave me that name because I'm the firstborn or the extension of my father.
Right.
So Reou simply means road
Okay.
Oh, wow.
in my
Okay.
language.
Okay.
Makun rogine.
Ro.
I'm going to take this road.
Okay.
All right. Ed means to grow from. So if you cut like the branch of a tree, it grows again, right?
Yeah.
Ed,
Okay.
right? So
okay.
I'm cut from my father
Sure.
and I'm growing from that.
Perfect.
That's Reouhidi,
Okay.
Nice.
right? Reuben means behold the son.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Son of one of the 12 tribes of Israel, son
Right.
of Leah. And then Ndjerareou is row is at the end is one who builds a road.
Oh.
Right. I've never done construction.
Yeah. No,
So it's not that. But
That's
you know,
cool.
what's the road I'm building? So Ndjera
Yeah.
means to do something.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And road is road.
Is
It
road
means
again.
to build
So
a road.
It repeats itself
It
there.
repeats there.
Okay.
So my brothers, I have 2 brothers. Mine is Reouhidi.
Uh-huh.
My brother right after me is Reouhidi. So he has Ro and then Noji. So Noji in my language means brotherhood. And then my youngest brother is Robanga.
Mm.
So road to peace.
Very cool.
How
So
do-
we're Ro, yep.
How do you think your name has guided you? I mean, we haven't got into your
We're
story,
getting into
but-
that. You'll
Yeah.
see the roads,
Yeah.
the many roads I've taken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, because in the African culture, naming a kid or a child is very important.
Right.
The Muslims do it extraordinarily well.
Okay.
Like they have an entire ceremony. And
Yeah,
I've
we're
been
just
there.
like Jack?
Yeah,
Jack?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bill.
Bill. So
Yeah, you know, it's true.
and with the Muslims, like they'll have an entire day to invite people over. I went to one, a really good friend of mine. We sat outside. There was lots of people. Then I think the name was given, and then it came out, and then it spread around, and we had food, and we went home.
Wow.
So
Why? That's a wonderful tradition.
yeah, they go to extent in the Gambai culture where I am from is not to that extent, but it either can be your, like my grandfather gave me that name, and then it could be a family member, and the name can speak to something in the past, something that you can hope for in the future, or something in the present, right? Or named after a certain family member, which a lot of people do, but it has a significance because that's going to carry the reputation of your family.
Yeah, and
Right,
and,
it's
and it
not-
guides the development of that child.
Yes, and it traces the culture, traces a family lineage still, right? So
That's an
pretty
interesting idea.
And born in Chad?
I was born in Chad, Africa.
Okay.
I work in schools, and I say I'm from Chad. Where's Chad? I got a friend named Chad.
Who's Chad?
I got a dog named Chad.
Okay,
I got a friend named
But
Chad.
I'm looking at your hat.
Yeah.
And if you look at a world atlas or a map, it's just CHAD. I've never seen the T.
Why do you think it'd be CHAD?
I guess because Americans can pronounce it.
Yes,
easily.
English.
Yeah.
That's how you write it in French.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
The French write it with T, and that's a segue because Chad was colonized by the French.
Interesting.
So one of your questions, we have two national languages in Chad, which is French and Arabic.
Oh,
So
okay.
those are the
Okay.
two recognized national languages, and then multiple other languages and dialects.
So why Arabic? Is Arabic an older language for Chad than French?
Yeah, Arabic is an
Okay.
older language, and then when I say I should specify Chad in Arabic because Egypt is right next door.
Oh yeah.
And you have Libya, but it's not the same type. They speak Arabic as well.
Okay.
But it's the pronunciation of words, maybe the understanding of stuff. So somebody from Chad necessarily can't communicate with somebody from Libya like directly. That it takes some work.
Really interesting.
And there's a lot of also things within the evolution of the language as well. And so so there's two national languages because you go to school in French.
Yeah.
Right. You go to
Okay.
school in French. Business is done in French with with government officials and all that stuff amongst each other. The market is mostly dominated by the Muslim community. So you learn.
So you have to learn both.
Yeah, you have to learn both
to
You have
function.
to function and to operate really well. And then you have your own dialect. So the average kid throughout Africa, in general, and it's in Chad specifically, speaks 3 languages or more. They speak whatever the national language due to colonization may be. They speak maybe a stronger or more dominant language in that country, whatever that may be, and then they speak their own ethnic language.
When you leave the confines of the United States, that seems to be the case across the globe. Is most people speak multiple different languages.
Yeah, the majority world does.
So how's that learned in Chad? Is that taught in a school institution, or is it one language taught, the family has another, and then you have to learn trial by fire? You've got to learn to function on your own.
You learn by using, right? I think if you're speaking all 3, you're going to pick it up.
Yeah, absolutely, sure.
You go to school in French, you're going to learn, as you learn in English here.
Right.
You spend your days at home. Your parents and your friends are going to speak to you in that language, and then you go to the market and you have friends who are Muslims and they speak, Arabic. So you learn that.
You just have to.
You just have to learn because I think there's a study done. And I hate quoting studies if I don't know them, but before the age of 12, if you're learning multiple languages, you're going to learn languages easier as you get older.
Sure,
Yeah.
Because you're learning them all the time, every day, using it.
You're learning the skill of learning language.
Exactly. You're
Yeah.
able to somehow. So my youngest sister, who was actually born in the U.S., my parents took her home to Chad when she was 3. I'm sorry, 3 months old, actually.
Oh wow.
She speaks 8 languages, 7 to 8
my
languages.
Wow.
First, she has a gift. Then she grew up in that culture of learning languages. And plus, she's just a good learner of something. And she immerses herself in it. So when she was learning Spanish, I think she went to Ecuador or some place like that and spent 3 months there, away from any English speakers, because she wanted to be forced to learn the language and not have a way out to speak something else.
Oh, okay.
Right? So French and Gambai. So she's really good with that. She's in Congo, Kinshasa. There's another Congo, but she's working with the World Health Organization there. So languages are part of of African life, and they carry significance. And what's so interesting is you learn the average of 3, but you could speak up to 5, 6 because imagine 4 of us here. We come from different tribes. We're going to talk to each other in French. We're going to speak to each other in Arabic. You'll learn a little bit of my language. I'll learn a bit of yours, and I'm speaking all of your words here and there, and we'll have an entire conversation where there's a mixer of those languages and terminology. Because in some languages, you may want to say something that has a significant meaning, but the words in the particular language don't portray it as much. So you'll throw in the word from the language.
You'll have to
switch.
You'll switch, right? You'll throw in 2 or 3 words of that, so you can get a whole, Spanglish. It's just, but you'll have 3 or 4, something like that. Yeah.
So personally, how many languages do you speak?
I speak 2 fluently, so French and English.
Okay.
Gambai is my tribal language.
Okay.
When I came to the U.S., my parents spoke that most at home. So I came to the U.S. when I was 4 years old.
Oh, wow.
4 and a half. And my parents did a good job of speaking that at home, so I learned to understand it, but I always respond in English. So actually, when we went home, it was really helpful to at least follow some conversations.
Yeah.
But I never utilized it as much. So I don't consider it as 3 because it's not a full, I couldn't hold an entire conversation.
Right.
You can understand it.
I can
you
understand
just can't.
it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. I'm looking at the geography here of exactly where it's at. So it's
there you go.
Would you call that Central Africa?
Yeah. So in some maps it say Central, some will say West. Some call it the dead heart of Africa because it's right in the middle. Right? You just point right there. And Chad is actually 2 times bigger in Texas. You need 2 Texas to fit into Chad. That's how big it is. And Texas is big.
Big, yeah.
Oh, I was driving one. Yeah, so. Yeah.
I think that's the anomaly of the scale when you zoom out.
Oh.
It doesn't reflect the true ginormous size of Africa. It always looks scaled down.
Yeah.
But I've heard so many people say if you see a true representation of the continent of Africa, it just dwarfs everything.
It dwarfs.
Yeah.
Like almost all, I think all the continents can fit into Africa.
You are probably right.
Wow. Yeah. So I am seeing half of Chad is desert.
Yes, it is.
And then half is forest.
Yeah. So if you look north of N'Djamena, so N'Djamena is the capital, N'Djamena.
Okay.
North of that,
it's a big old lake.
It's a big, right? That's Lake Chad.
Okay.
It's really shrunk over the years, but most of that's Sahara Desert.
Okay.
Northern Chad, the Sahara. Right. I have never had the opportunity to go there. I'm definitely gonna do that. That's one of the sad things that I never did in Chad is I really never got to discover my country.
Right.
You know, and I really want to do that. So that's Northern Chad, and that's mostly, like I said, you have Niger, you have Sudan to the east, and then you have Nigeria and Cameroon, which touch Chad on the west side. You have Central African Republic, and then you have Libya. So I think that's 6 countries that surround us.
Okay.
As well. And
where's Nigeria? Oh, I see it down here.
Nigeria, yeah. So the tip of Nigeria hits Chad, at the kind of Lake Chad area, and even as you cross into Cameroon.
Do you know what the capital of Nigeria is?
Abuja.
Okay, I think that's where I flew into.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that Abuja is the capital.
He has been, and we've heard so many stories about him. Have you ever been?
I've never
been either.
Yeah. Man, I told my sister about you, and I was like, man, we got to cook this brother a meal.
Yeah,
and I was gonna do that for Deb. I'm gonna invite you. We're gonna cook a traditional African meal for
unless she's putting that hot sauce on there.
Oh, I got that right here. She gifted that.
Okay, so
he brought me some. Tell you the story. He brought some hot sauce up to the chief, and he goes, "Now," he said, "Boys, this is hot. She makes it hot." And he's like, "Oh, come on! I was raised with Spanish people. That stuff was hot.
It was hot.
It was delicious, but it was hot."
There's one rule about the Whiskey Bros that you should know, and so we actually officially have this rule. Wherever one Whiskey Bro goes, the others are automatically invited. The invitation stands.
That stands.
Right.
One of our African cultures, a friend of our friends are our friends.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
That's how it works with us.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. Awesome. That's kind of our MO as well.
Yeah.
We all eat off each other's plates. I mean, it's.
So I'm looking. I zoomed in. It doesn't look very densely populated.
It's not.
Okay.
It's not. Again, I think the current population of Chad is about maybe 14, 15 million. One time when I was there, it was like 11, so it is growing.
Wow, that's a lot too.
Yeah, most people. So when you look at of course, northern Chad, it's the nomads.
Yeah.
So they're just, moving freely. The nomadic community is up there. There are some, where's Tibesti, I think. Yeah, some sites. I've never been. Again, some friends have been, so I don't want to speak too much of that, but there are some interesting sites up there. The Chad has had skirmishes with Libya because there's a lot of, I think, up on when you look at the border, there's been uranium. Back in the 80s, there was a lot of U.S. support for Chad against Libya encroaching. But those are historical things. So mostly people are the dense population is in the capital, N'Djamena.
Okay. I was going to ask about, was it Lake Chad that you were talking about
Yes.
on the border? And you're saying it was in record lows. Is that because of man-made? I noticed in some of these countries, like they will divert water from rivers to cause unrest, or governments will get a hold and dam up rivers to.
I don't think that's the case with Lake Chad. It's just drying up because of the heat
drought.
and desertification. I think deforestation. There's been attempts to plant more trees and stuff, but it's just, I think, a natural, just water evaporating, and unless there's other things I don't know about. And maybe I don't want to know about.
That's right.
Yeah, I got you.
That's right.
I got you.
So how often have you been able to go back over there? I know that
Crossroads.
you remarked that you don't, you haven't been able to go and really visit your country as much as you like.
Yes, I haven't been back in 4 years. I think the last time I went was 2020. So
Okay.
early, maybe January, February, just before everything hit with COVID. So I think I took the last flight out to come back to the U.S.
Oh, well.
Okay.
before flights really
got crazy.
crazy. And then if I ended up not taking that flight, I would have been there for
Oh wow,
a few months or a year. So it's been about 4 years.
Okay.
4 years.
How has COVID affected Chad?
COVID. I think when I was there, the news was getting out, but we still live our lives.
Okay.
We're not so, I want to say paranoid is the word, but it doesn't hit us,
Oh, yeah.
especially as, we're not impacted with it as much.
Okay.
And especially when you know that most of Africa is rural. Like nobody in the rural community, unless they hear, is like, what's happening in the world?
Yeah.
What, COVID? What's this? What?
I was going to say,
Now,
so,
what?
It's
sort
not,
of like
not
the
really a topic of discussion.
It's not a topic of a discussion.
sort of like the good parts of Texas.
We've dealt with coups. I mean, COVID. I've been through a couple of coups. That's a running joke in my family. How many coups have you been through? I got 4 right now, but I could. So it did impact us because we're still connected globally with flights coming into the country. Economically, that affects people, especially with the lack of resources coming in.
Yeah.
It gives. I'll speak very carefully, is that it gives opportunity for governments to do things
Okay.
to benefit them.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes no sense.
I think COVID in general worldwide has done that.
Yeah.
And I don't even think
governments.
it's conspiracy anymore.
Yeah.
To say that.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. What is the basis for the Chad economy?
Back in the day, it was cotton. Cotton was- yeah.
Okay.
A lot of cotton. We're a big cotton producer. I'm trying to remember the name of the cotton. Coton Chad. So Cotton Chad was that. Then in 2000, oil. We're oil producing country. Unfortunately, we pull out more water out of the ground than oil. I worked in the oil sector for about 3 years.
Interesting.
For ExxonMobil's affiliate, EPSI. And I say it's affiliate because if I say I work for ExxonMobil, people think, oh, you got this salary. No. I wasn't paid from the U.S. coffers.
Yeah.
I wasn't hired from the U.S. side. 'Cause at that time, I wasn't
Chad
a citizen.
side
The
of-
Chad side.
Yeah.
So my salary is less. But, I got an opportunity to go out to the oil fields. I worked more in the office space, so as a training coordinator and in HR. So that was more my role, was training a lot of the Chadian youth or those employed in English and petroleum English so that they could operate well in the field.
How does that play out? Because you talk about Chad being tribal and your tribe. How does oil approach Chad and these tribes and ask for their blessing to punch holes in the ground to export oil?
Money's green, right?
Money, yeah.
So
I was going to
People
say.
want. I mean, there's things that operate at higher levels than I will ever be in. But I think just at a normal basis, it was employment opportunity for a whole lot of people, for a country that really has high unemployment, then you have oil being discovered, which then brings in the major oil companies and then the subcontractors who could create employment as well.
A stark contrast from how oil is viewed here now. Because if you want to go punch holes in the ground in some rural area, now you face environmentalists, you face I don't know, just multiple hordes of people that don't want you to extract oil, and they're like, they're completely mindless to the economic benefits of it. Yeah, there are some valid concerns, environmentally speaking, but I was curious about that, how that would be approached in rural Africa.
No, I think, I try to be very understanding of people's positions. People talk about who are worried about what oil can do for the environment, the environmentalists. I understand all of that. I think sometimes where my personal thing is, while you're doing this, the people who are actually impacted by your decisions are not you're not talking to them.
That's right.
And you're acting with a savior mentality for places you don't live in, you don't operate in.
Yeah.
One of the blessings that I've had is like, when I tell people I go to Africa, I'm not going as a diplomat.
Right.
Or when I go home, I'm not going as a diplomat. I'm not going working for a company. I'm not going as a missionary. When I go home, I go home.
Yeah.
Like
you're going as an African.
I'm going as Africa as a Chad. I'll land in Chad. A friend of mine will pick me up, take me straight to the house. There's no transition in a hotel or I take some malaria meds before I go because my system gets weakened here.
Yeah.
I've had malaria like 5 or 6 times.
I just learned that malaria. Once you have a malaria, your body does not keep that immunity. You've got to keep your immune system built up with treatments.
You do. I mean, for me, I couldn't give blood or something for a long time because I've had malaria. So there's some things you can't give because you were born or either grew up in malaria regions or you've had malaria. So I get turned down a lot for that. Because, again, when I take some meds, it just helps reboost my system for going back there. What's got left in it.
Interesting.
Because when I was there, I'd had it several times because my system kept fighting it.
Yeah.
And then I'd get, feel better for a little bit, get chills, and I feel good. And then I'd get hit again until my system,
take
us
and
the
through
medicine
that,
helps that.
Us here at this table and nobody listening to us has probably ever experienced malaria.
No.
Let's hear those symptoms.
I hate malaria.
Oh, yeah. It doesn't sound fun by any means.
So bad.
I mean, I've seen the Hollywoodized version of it.
It is. One of the things that ExxonMobil didn't play around is with malaria meds. There was a guy who wasn't taking them. They put him on the plane that day and sent him home.
Oh, wow.
Because what had happened is somebody got sick when they returned to the States and went to the hospital. And because you don't have malaria, they couldn't pick it up. Right? It could until they sent his blood samples to the CDC. And by that time he was dead and it was malaria. And that was like, you need to take these meds. You've never been in it. So what happens is when I first was getting it, you start getting high fever, then chills, you're cold all of a sudden. It was like 100 and something degrees. I'm freezing, right? I want to be out in the sun. And then I'd get chills again. I'd be down. I'd feel weak. I couldn't hold anything down. And I can't remember the name of the meds, but you take a bunch of meds, help you fight through that system. I think the first time I had it lasted a good week and a half before. And I literally locked myself in a room that was hot so I could sweat it out. That's one of the things I found out. If I lock and it's hot in there and just lay in there and let my body sweat, suffer through it.
Yeah.
And then it got to a point where my system could pick it up, meaning that I could, have a normal day and I'll be sitting around. All of a sudden I feel these bumps on the side of my lip. I'm like, oh, it's coming. That was one of the signs that either malaria is coming.
Jeez.
And so I would either pop some medication for that, or I got to a point where my system was really strong that I would feel the several bumps at the end, is meaning that it was coming and went through the system really quick. My body fought it, and then at the end it would leave these bumps, meaning that it's at the tail end of it.
Interesting.
Do the meds work well?
They do, but you have to change them up because your body
gets used to
it, right? Gotcha. The tolerance begins to build, and you can do that. So.
Is malaria this is a tough question. Is malaria one of Africa's biggest oppressors?
Yes. I think malaria is, because you have so much water build up. There's no, there's no
mosquito
control, right?
Yeah.
You get
it's
tons
impossible.
of mosquito nets and it's difficult. Yeah. You have to have better systems for, draining water and all those things. We don't have that. And so mosquitoes build up and eventually.
So lots of stagnant water.
Stagnant water,
okay.
Yep.
So I wonder if we actually control malaria, from a
like it may be it's here, it's just controlled.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's uncontrolled. But if we gain the technology to kind of lay waste to malaria, then that changes the game for Africa. Yeah, I'm sitting here listening to you talk, and I'm thinking, well, at no point in the last few days have I even thought about Africa. Right? It's like, should we be thinking thinking of Africa more? What's Africa to you?
I wish more Westerners would.
Okay.
I think as I get older, there's a level of understanding. There's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
Most Westerners are ethnocentric. So it's about
I would agree with
what
that. Yeah.
comes from their direction, and how do you view the world through the Western eyes, and life is being lived, and got a lot of circumstances happening here. For me, it's different in the sense that I have my foot in both worlds every single day.
Right.
My parents live there. I'm committed to what's happening in Africa. I live here in the West. Even here in the United States, I think I hang around more diverse populations than a lot of my friends. Right? I'm on this great show, Whiskey Bros, in West Texas, an African. That's right. Because I like to get out and meet new people. That's just kind of my nature.
That's a really good nature to have.
Yeah.
And we'll be sure to boost this in Chad.
I'll put it out, man.
How does that look? I mean, Africa obviously gets largely overlooked for vacationers or people wanting to travel abroad. It's like Europe, Asia, Japan, or even South America. How does that look for Africans when a bunch of whiteys are like, let's show up in Africa? And they're like, screw Europe, screw Japan, screw South America, and the tourism is just a boomtown for Africa. How does that look for Africans?
They like that. I think that tourism is booming on the continent.
Okay.
And there's a lot more efforts by countries like Ghana and Rwanda to invite more individuals to Africa, because there's nothing better than just actually going yourself. Somebody can tell you about it. Someone can show you about it, but you yourself. But you have to also overcome some of the fears, right?
True. Yeah.
I tell people, there's this great article. I can't remember what's the name of it, but it talks about Africa for the beginner and Africa for the hardcore.
Okay.
Like, if you've never been to Africa, I'm telling you, I'm not sending you to Chad as your first trip to Africa. You'll never go back.
Okay.
That's Africa for the hardcore.
Where is beginner Africa then?
Beginner Africa.
I don't know, because where I went wasn't the greatest.
Yeah,
place.
Nigeria. That sits in the middle. I would maybe put it in more the hardcore section.
Yeah.
Right. Zambia, for example.
Okay.
I would say it's Africa for the beginner. Ghana is definitely Africa for the beginner. I think you can take a flight from Atlanta directly into Accra, Ghana these days. So there's a lot of Ghanaians going back. That would say, and the reason I say Zambia is for the beginners because I have I think it was last year, I have a 75-year-old friend, or his late 70s, who actually booked his Airbnb from the US, booked his flight, booked everything, and went to Zambia. Right.
Yeah.
You got a lot of mission population in Zambia, and you got a lot of individuals going for safaris because you have Zambia and Botswana and Zimbabwe, and it sits close to South Africa. South Africa would be Africa for the beginner. And sometimes within our circles, I'll be honest, Africans don't consider, maybe I say us Central Africans don't consider South Africa, Africa.
Yeah.
It's like more an internal thing, but we know it's Africa.
It's like Houston kind of for us.
Yeah.
When I hear Africa, I think a continent that it's always been exploited. And so that's what I'm wondering, if the tourist industry swaps and people start showing up in Africa for vacation, do Africans look at that as like, oh shit, we're about to be invaded and we're about to be recalling? How does it really look for them if that becomes a thing? I'm all about it. I'm all about it. I'd love to go right now.
It's that last question up there.
Well, I think one of the things is like, I just at a very basic level, I think, people want to live. If tourism brings in money so that I can be a dishwasher or a valet in order to make money, that unfortunately I got to turn this off. Let me turn this. I thought I turned this off already. That allows me to care for my family.
Yeah.
Then I want tourism to come in.
So you think primarily it would be welcomed?
It would be welcomed.
Okay.
I think by the general population, because much of Africa is still rural. I was talking with a friend today. He, before he came here, it's like I I'm speculating like 60-70% of Africans still live in the rural communities, and then they flock into the 1 or 2 major cities to look for work because there's not enough work in their villages in order to survive. And then they're able to do these little menial jobs that come from these tourists and, from multinational organizations coming in. So I understand the argument of exploitation. Makes sense.
So that's, we talk about fear.
I got a new phone.
And like fear mongering and the fear propaganda, but it exists anywhere you go. There's a potential chance of getting harmed. You go to New York City, it's like a rite of passage to get mugged, right? I mean, New Orleans and Washington.
This is a knife.
This was my wife. New Orleans and Washington, D.C. are like the murder capitals of the United States, but you don't hear the fear mongering about that. So.
Yeah, we have a false sense of security.
Yeah, we really do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, who owns the narrative, right? Who's telling the story?
I think that's a valid question.
So my friend Tunde, we did a little bit of podcast, and I'm trying to launch a podcast with him that talks a lot about Africa, so we can claw back some of this narrative.
Okay.
So for example, if you look at the U.S. Embassy website for travel abroad, and you should, I tell people, you should.
Okay.
Right? Chad will always say, not recommended for travel, even in the most peaceful time. But again, that's from looking as a Westerner. Me as an African, as long as there's a flight flying into the country,
it's good.
I'm on a plane.
Yeah.
I don't care what the embassy thing has to say.
Yeah.
Right? For me, so my threshold of security and safety is different than it would be for somebody. Somebody would see that's like, I can't go because they said, like, well, I'm booking a flight. Air France is flying in.
Yeah.
Air Ethiopia is flying in. I'm headed that way.
So you said it. It's like your comfort or with security or insecurity is in a different place.
Yes.
But you've been through 4 coups.
Yeah.
So it's like well-earned security tolerance.
That's impressive. How many coups have you been through?
Yeah.
0.
How many coups have you been through?
I mean, unless you count
not
COVID as a
myself.
coup, but we could go down that road. But yeah, let's not.
So before we go down this deep hole that we've been going down, go ahead and explain a little bit, because you said that you've been through 4 coups, but then you also said you came to America when you was 4. So give us a little bit of your story. Background of
I like it.
how you came over here at 4, where college got into, and then kind of go down that rabbit hole a little bit.
Okay. And then maybe I can touch the coups later. Maybe.
Yeah, we'll get into it. I
We'll come
promise.
back to it.
So so born in Chad, and actually in the capital in N'Djamena.
Okay.
In 1977. My father is a pastor. My mother, she's mostly a school teacher, French English.
What's the biggest, I guess, religion in Chad?
Christianity?
Is it Christianity
Is
or
it pastor?
No, Islam.
Islam?
Islam,
Okay.
okay.
Islam.
Yeah, for sure.
I think
Okay.
it's more than 55%, 60%.
Okay. Is that what he's a pastor in, or?
No, my dad's a Christian pastor.
Oh, okay.
He grew up in the Protestant evangelical circles. And so I'll just start from my life, and then maybe we get back to how Christianity entered my family. And then, so in 1979, a civil war broke out. So as I understand it, there were 3 factions fighting for control of the capital.
Okay.
And so once
And this would be your first coup?
this would be the first, because it was an
Okay.
overthrow with 3 different factions.
So you're like 3 at the time.
I'm about 2, 2.5. And so what my dad did, he put me and my younger brother, the 2 of us, and my mom on a plane, Mission Aviation Fellowship. So they're Christian pilots, and they flew us out of the capital. My dad stayed behind.
Oh, wow.
And he had this little Peugeot 5-seater car. And so what he would be doing is he would pick up people and take them out to the edge of the city, go back, pick up some more.
Oh, wow.
He kept doing that.
That is also, just for an FYI, that is a French automobile.
Yes.
As well.
The
Yes.
Peugeot. Yep.
Yeah.
And why? Yeah.
Was he part of the coup at the time?
Who my
Your dad?
No.
Or he was just serving.
He was just serving
as
Okay.
relief.
Yes, as
Serving.
relief. Yeah. He's a well-known pastor there, and he was just serving people. Like he wasn't. He could have laughed, but he's like, I'm not leaving. That's my dad's mentality. I'm not leaving people. My family's safe. They're gone.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
staying here
go.
and
I'm gonna
staying
go
with
get
my-
people out.
Wow.
Yeah, staying with my country.
And so one evening he told me he was taking a group of people out, and he was shot at by the night patrols. And so he's in the car with 4 or 5 people. They put their hands up, and the head of the regiment came up and looked at him and knew who he was, because he'd been a pastor at the local church for many years. And he said, "Pastor Abel Ndjerareou?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, and so he made his guys change their tire and said, you guys need to get off the streets. And so eventually my dad left and he joined us in the southern part of the country in Mundu. So that's the southern, major southern city in Chad. And then the villages where I'm from, Bebija, Bennoy, Bibalim are all around that area. Then eventually we went to West Africa. So we're in Burkina Faso for, I think, a year. And then in 1981, my father got a scholarship, or through some missionary friends who knew, they sponsored him to come to Deerfield, Illinois, where he was Trinity Divinity school there. So that's where he did his master's, I think, in Old Testament theology. We joined him in 1982. And so that's, that put me about 4.5 years old. Yeah. And that began my journey and our family's journey with the United States. And so we were there for about 2 years. So from 84 to 86. And then he got a spot here to do his PhD at Dallas Theological Seminary. Oh, wow. And so in 86, we moved here. Came down here. So we lived in DeSoto, Texas, near Duncanville. Yeah, so I started going to school there. So I started first grade all the way up to, I think, fifth grade. During that span of 82 to 86, my younger brother and my sister were born as well. So I have 3 other siblings besides me and my brother who were born here. 2 of them were born here. So in 89, my dad decided to move the family back to Chad.
Why?
My dad, first of all, when he came, he wasn't going to stay. Right. His heart wasn't. He came to get the education necessary in order to go home and serve the people of Chad in ministry. And a segue to that is, so when Chad was independent in 1960, you had the French. Now you have an entire group of individuals that you have to train to now lead the country. You need doctors, lawyers, all types of people. So they were giving scholarships to send a lot of Chadians overseas to Russia. My mom actually went to Russia to be a midwife, to study how to be a midwife.
To Russia?
To Russia.
Okay.
At that time.
Okay.
And then my father went to Paris, France on a scholarship. And the reason I mention that is because there were only 2 individuals who actually went on religious scholarships. Everybody else was like medical doctors, lawyers, and all this stuff. So when they came back, they started really that kind of the Christian religious leaders of the country. Okay. And so part of him being in the U.S. was just to continue and move back. He wasn't like going to stay here in the United States.
Gotcha. Right? So was that scholarship, you said it was French funded?
French. Yeah. Okay. A lot of the French, I don't know where the scholarships, but I mean, the obligation of the colonial powers, like you've been leading for many years, not really training up national leadership. Now they're independent. You need leaders, right, who have some type of education. So that's where they went. So maybe the French government provided that. I don't know who provided the funds for it, but that's what.
But the opportunity.
So the opportunity was there.
In 89, you're headed back to Chad.
So in 89, he took the family back, but my younger brother, myself stayed because we were still in school. So it was in the middle of 6th grade, I believe 5th grade year.
Let me ask. How was that for you? How was your integration here, and how were you received? And what were your
coming for the first time to the U.S.? Yeah, it was fine. I mean, I didn't, I was just a kid, so 6 to like 12.
Yeah,
I mean, there were some incidents I think in DeSoto that really opened our eyes to some of the challenges, racial challenges here in the United States. Yeah. I still remember this. As I thought back on it, there's like a stop sign thrown in our yard when we were living in DeSoto. And I think when I look back at that, I didn't really understand it, but there, we lived in a pretty kind of racial.
You're a kid,
I'm a kid,
Right.
Understanding some of those racial dynamics of even not even racial dynamics, even the cultural ones.
Okay.
Those I think were the biggest challenges for my parents and for ourselves early on. Right.
So that was felt back then, like you felt those pressures even personally, or that pressures as far as not being able to fully integrate.
Yeah, I think my parents, of course, felt it more because they're parents, right? Like to your point, Chance, we were kids just enjoying our time.
You're not supposed to be aware of that.
We're not supposed to be aware of that. I think there were some cultural things when we played with our American friends that were very different of how they interacted with their parents and how we interacted with ours. Right? It was I can't do that. I can't say that to my mom.
That's what I'm gonna like. Punishment, like corporal punishment, was a thing in your household. I'm guessing because I got my ass handed to me by my dad and my mom.
You know, it was the way my dad did it. It scared me because he didn't fly out the handle. Like he would literally sit you down and talk through what you did wrong.
Okay.
And ask you questions. And you will still get spanked.
Oh, yeah.
So my mind is like, just spank me at the end because he wasn't going to not spank you.
Yeah.
Right.
He just wanted you to understand. And that conversation could last 20 minutes. And the spank is like, I wanted it to last 2 seconds.
Yeah,
and then
you know it's coming.
you know it's coming.
Dad, spank me and then let's talk.
Yeah, and then let's talk. But no, he's always been an educator. He wants you to understand.
I like that approach though, mostly because
Yeah.
my wife explaining to me that, like, she's like, you know, corporal punishment's fine, but tell them why and what they did wrong, so they know next time. That's kind of brilliant. And then, people in American households, I've seen some shits, some kids that are shits.
Yeah.
It's just like, what?
Oh, yeah.
And then
you
he's doing
ever?
some drive-by spanking. I work in the school
I was
system.
fixing to say,
I'm like,
you could probably talk about that for sure.
call me bro one more time.
We were in school and our teachers had like holes drilled in the paddles, you know, for aerodynamics.
Yeah.
And I was telling one of my wife's friends about this, and she was just appalled. She's like, that's abuse. I'm like, I mean, we turned out okay, and we're you there's a sense of authority that you had, and you knew to respect it. Otherwise, you're going to get a pop.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can. There is kids that get beat or whatever, but
there's a line,
right? But I think
Definitely.
it's what's wrong with
Yeah.
the majority of
Legally.
America right now is
Yeah.
because we quit discipline our kids.
Well,
and I
and
say we,
legally,
nobody here, but
abuse is like the signs of the correction last for more than 24 hours.
It's the consequences are lacking. Like I think
Yeah.
some of these schools is like, if you're gonna put this rule or this thing into place, you got to carry through on the consequences. On it. Like it's got to happen so it can be understood that there's no negotiating your way out of this. It's already been set. You handle it. You accept the consequences and you move on and you learn from that. But when you take away those consequences, then it's like, I can get my way out.
You're
of this.
doing a disservice to that person.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, when they grow up and they are able to function, we can look back and go, okay, I'm kind of glad I got my ass beat a couple of times.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't know how to really function or communicate or be respectful without it, right?
Yeah.
So,
The
you're
learning
kind of doing
portion
a
of it.
disservice. But anyway,
Yeah, exactly.
there's one of those rabbit holes that we go down.
No, that's all right. That's all right. Yeah.
Pass me the bottle and bond, please, the 1792.
It's a great whiskey.
so 80s, you're going back.
Yeah. So 89.
Well,
we're-
you said you and your brother stayed.
Yeah, we stayed until 90 because the school year ended in.
And you were
in
how old?
1990. I was, I think, 12.
So who did you stay with?
Actually, we stayed with some family friends in Grand Prairie,
Oh, okay.
Texas. And so once the year ended, my dad flew back and took me and my brother back to Chad. And so I was in Chad from 1990 until 1994.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And I'll just speak for myself. It was a really difficult time, transition for me.
Yeah.
Because people will say, I'll say it. I was hard headed. I was being pulled out of the only culture I knew up to that point. I really had some difficulty now transitioning language, and so I remember I pulled up to the house. That we lived in, and it was mud brick. Like I'm coming from kind of solid. Your brick house here in Texas.
Suburban life.
Yeah. And I pull up and I see this mud brick house. Like literally just bricks made of mud, dried up and put there. And I'm like, what? Is this where we're living? Like that was my thinking at the time. And then I don't know if we had electricity. I think we did, but the electrical grid in Chad is terrible. And so
in Africa, in period, because I told you about our experience
about
with it.
Nigeria.
So,
it's and so you have to learn to use a lamp.
Yep.
Every night. We didn't have. I don't think in that first one we had an indoor toilet.
Yeah.
So we had the outhouse.
Yep.
It was there. So I had to get used to that. I didn't have running water, so it's water in a bucket and shower with that. Like that, it was just coming at me. And then now I had to learn French because
oh yeah, I guess you started out. French isn't going to be implemented here in DeSoto.
Yeah. So now I have to learn to speak French.
And you're like 10 to 14.
I'm 12. 12 to 16. I'm in that period. I'm in Chad going through
so
all of these things.
It's like teenage boy too.
Yeah,
like
and yep. And I'm trying to challenge my mother.
Yeah,
and now she's in Africa, where there's no CPS,
nah, you just
where there's no that whole family and the community and everybody's coming for you.
Yeah, everybody's whooping you over there.
Challenge accepted.
And I'll give you one answer. I had to learn. So I was, I don't know, 13 or something, and my mom said something, and I stood there and I looked at her, and I was going to say in my head, because I'd watched some movie in the U.S. years ago. This is the nonsense. I stood there. And she had this broom in her hand. I remember she hit me in my shoulder. And I just stood there. And then she hit me and I stood there, and she swung back and she hit me in my shoulder again. And I opened my mouth, and the next thing she popped me in my mouth. So by this time, I'm like, she's not backing down. So I actually walk away, walk out the door. She follows me.
Oh boy.
I go out the gate, because most houses in Africa are built with like courtyard like here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I walk out. She's still coming. I'm like, where am I going to go? I can't go down the street because, streets in Africa are always full. They're not dead here, right? Yeah. And so I'm like, I don't want to get embarrassed with her following me down the street. So I cross the street we had some relatives who lived across the street. I'm like, she's not going to follow. She followed me across the street through the gate. And thankfully, the mom in that house, because I was running out of real estate. Because I'm like, okay, what's left is just a hallway and then the wall. And then I got to turn around and take a beating, because God forbid I raise my hand to my mom. That would be the end of me, right? Oh, both physically and I think also mentally in a way too.
Everything.
That's so, it's like had the fear of God.
Oh, yeah. The fear of a lot of the entire community.
If you swat your mom, then your dad gets involved.
And then that's a whole different box. So thankfully, the mother in that home got up, calmed my mom down, and my mom went home. And I think I slept somewhere else that night.
So you deserved it.
I desered it. I deserved it fully.
For sure.
On that. So I think that was a difficult transition. To your point, Doc, is like I'm in that teenage years. I'm in a new place. I grew up very Western. Now I'm conflicting with my home culture. I'm learning the language, deal with the different cultural norms, respect. I really wanted to come back to the U.S. I was telling my parents I don't want to be here. And I got kicked out of school because I think it was the second year, so maybe 13 or 14, they put us me and my brother in French school. And I didn't want to be there, so I acted up. I was skipping class. I was, coming late. And so anytime you skip class or you come late, you got to go to the principal's office, and he's got to give you a note and everything. And so one day, I'd had enough of those, and I actually was sent to the office. I cussed out the vice principal, said a few things that I shouldn't have said, and they kicked me out of school.
Okay.
And of course, my mom was mad, and so she had me in her bedroom on my knees on the hard ground. And if I sat down, poof. So I was like, my knees were killing me.
Oh, that's brutal.
Because it was like hard surface.
Oh, yeah. You pushed her past that limit.
Yeah. Because in a way, I understand I was embarrassing her. I was embarrassing her husband. I was embarrassing, the community, our family, in what I was doing. Now, you can argue it's understandable, but I was still doing something I shouldn't have been doing. And so, but my father, I say this a lot about my mom, but during this time, my father was traveling a lot because eventually he was a vice president of the evangelical churches of Chad, so all the church denominations he was responsible for. He eventually became the president of the evangelical churches of Chad, and he was doing all this ministry stuff and going and traveling a lot, so it was really upon my mom and the community to provide for us. And so, make a long story short, is that when my dad found out I got kicked out of school, he didn't even get angry. I just remember he never said, what are you doing or whatever. He said, I'm going to send you back to the U.S. Like, I'm not coming back, but I'm going to send you back to the U.S. And you got to understand about our culture, we're a communal culture.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not like I was living at home and then it was just my mom. I had my aunt, there were cousins.
Yeah.
There were a lot of people around, taking care of each other. So we're very communal in that nature. You can't go to Africa and assume that we don't sit in groups of families. Like you see a bunch of people, you can't tell who's related to whom.
Yeah.
Right.
There's like, we're just all together, right? Yeah. And so someone would have to point out, those kids who are sitting with this guy are actually those kids. And then that was like, you just can't do that.
You got a whole family of parents.
Yeah, you got a whole family of parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, and that's a good point. So in my language, to say dad is Baba, or father is Baba.
Mm-hmm.
That same Baba is used for all my dad's brothers. So I don't say uncle.
It's Bubba.
It's Baba.
It's
all of them are my fathers.
A little different than Bubba in Texas.
Yeah, it's Baba in Texas. Yeah.
Hey, Bubba.
It's actually Baba.
Baba.
I'm a say Baba. Okay. Baba.
Baba.
Yep.
Father, uncle.
Yep. And even close friends of my father, they're considered Baba.
So it's like the paternal role models.
Paternal role models. And they have authority. Because one of the things in a culture, when you say it takes a village to raise a child, man.
It does.
That's true.
It does?
Yep.
But the emphasis is wrong its emphasis is different for Westerners than it is for Africans. You say that because it's the care of the child you're concerned with, which is important.
Sure.
Yeah.
But for us, the emphasis is on the village.
Okay.
Get the village right, you will get the care for the child right.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
right?
a very significant point.
Because it's like this individual, care of the child. Yes, we understand that. But if the village is okay, if that child doesn't have a parent or the parent passes away or whatever, the village cares for the child.
Yeah.
So you have to have a good village.
Okay.
That's an important point.
Right.
That is.
That's where our emphasis differs
Okay.
in that statement.
That's why we're creating little narcissists.
Yeah, there's been plenty of arguments that we could really take a step back to that.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the essence of a public school system, kind of. It's kind of a reflection of your village here in the Western nations, right? It should be.
We're raising narcissists because everybody is so concerned about their comfort zone. And so of course they become self-absorbed.
And there's no concern about the quality of the village.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And I don't want to speak also like us. I try to remind Americans is where you are now is not where you always used to be.
Right.
There used to be a village mentality in this place where when you looked at the child and the parents looked at that child was a community child.
Yeah.
Like you remember going down the street and acting up?
Oh yeah.
You didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Now kids can because they can do it because they got backing from parents who don't even have a relationship with the people down there and whatever. And so you're in your individual circle. So it becomes very tiring. Like it's tiring to raise your own children by yourself. It's a responsibility. It's a community effort.
It really is. I've only got one.
Yeah.
But yes, it takes everybody
to help you out. Because when my father was traveling, it's like my mom was feeding us every single day. No, I'd go down the street and eat at my aunt's house.
Yeah.
I'd eat at my friend's house. And or we had food set. Or when my aunt cooked, she would set out 3 portions. One for my dad. You don't touch that because there was enough for him or whatever guest he was bringing.
Okay.
There was our portion, meaning me and my 2 brothers. Because we'd be running around and it said that we didn't know what time we'd come back. And then there'd be the portion for my sisters and my mom and it'd be set up there. And so whenever you got back, you would eat. Because we didn't do like family dinners. I'm trying to get concepts of what Africa does. Like we don't do like, everyone's going to eat at the table at 6. You eat where you find yourself. All right. With whoever. That's who. Yeah. Like I have my friends at noon. I'm like, oh, I'm not running home. No, we just eat here.
Yeah.
And then it'd be at my house and okay, we're going to eat here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
What changed with America? Because that's kind of the way I grew up. My mom was a school teacher. My family roots on both sides go back to the turn of the 19th century here in this community. So any bullshit that I tried to pull around the neighborhoods or in town, my mom knew about instantly. But what happened?
I think 60s
in that 30-year period.
The 60s happened.
Well, I was born after the 60s, man. I'm not that old.
No, I know, but that kind of changed because I remember hearing stories that my dad tells of family dinners. And the adults went first as a rule.
Okay. Yeah.
And so back then in the U.S., everywhere, predominantly it's been the job of the child to integrate into the culture. And so I think what you're pointing to is that's flipped.
That's flipped, yeah.
Yeah, and now
the children are given a sense of superiority.
Yeah.
And if you've listened to any Jordan Peterson, he nails it when he's like, children are tyrants.
Right.
Children are tyrants.
Yeah.
They have to be reined in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it behooves them to be reined in so they can be functional adults as they get older.
That's like the family is the platform that the child beats himself against in order to conform to. So, instead of just focusing on, like you said, focusing on the child part of the equation of the saying, the village raises the child, I think that's relevant.
And I think you make a good point. There's this sense of overcorrection for things that are done in the dark or done to children. Now we take those, smaller cases and apply it to the majority.
Yeah.
Where I think the majority was doing what they were supposed to do.
Yeah. Oh, I spanked my kid. Now I'm a child abuser.
Now you're all this and you apply it to, and now you're seeing the outpourings and consequences of that.
Yes.
In this sense. I truly believe that. And I think, there's a sense of lack of identity in a lot of the children. I'm not talking simply about black kids. I'm talking about kids in general.
Yeah, I agree.
Like when you lack identity, that anchor, I don't care how bright the future looks with technology or whatever, that anchor is supposed to hold you into place when we are moving in the winds and the waves of some unknown things at times, right? Yeah. So,
wow, that's deep.
That is what Africa anchors me, like that cultural identity that I have for my continent and for my people and my identity and my name. It anchors me sometimes in this lost world I'm in at times. I have something to draw back from to aspire for something. Yeah, foundation. That's very important. So in that, my dad was like, okay, I'm going to send you back. And so he had a friend in DeSoto that he went to seminary with. And they accepted that I move in with them.
So it's just you this
just
time.
Me.
Your brother is staying in Chad.
My brother actually went to Burkina Faso.
Okay.
Because there were so many school strikes. The teachers had gone on a lot of strikes, so school wasn't happening. My brother did a lot better than me. I was being the hard head. My younger brother behind me, he actually did what he was supposed to do.
Okay.
He learned from you.
He learns, that's exactly. He sees, let me just look at Reuben.
He's seen your mom with that broomstick, and he's like,
nah, I'm straight. I'm good. We're very different in that temperament. I love my brother. He's done a lot of great things. And so, So I didn't mention that my dad, when he left, he hadn't finished his PhD yet. So for the next 4 to 5 years, he'd come back to the U.S. during the summers and work on his PhD until he graduated in 1995.
Gotcha.
I think
still in Illinois?
No, he did his PhD here in Dallas.
Yeah.
Okay. So I had a question. So what, like his draw back to Chad was such that he didn't finish his PhD.
No, he did finish. Oh, he didn't finish it. He finished it eventually before moving back. Yeah. He eventually finished it 5 years later.
Okay, so for him, it sounds like, or it seemed like, the education was secondary to his mission. Or education was only in service
to the mission,
his mission.
Yep. Because my grandfather's dad was a pastor, right? So he comes from that lineage, and because my grandfather was the first Christian in our family, and that goes back to the missionaries. Actually, the missionaries came to our region of Chad, came in 1920 from a mission group in Canada.
Okay.
Right. And so I won't go back into that, but that's how it came in. And then, when my dad came to know the Lord as his personal savior, he then went into the ministry because he was actually going to go into biology. Remember, it's like medicine, and then got drawn into this and worked with his father. And so that seeing the heart for my dad has a strong heart for rural pastors.
Okay.
Yeah, because his father was a rural pastor. His father didn't speak French. His father spoke Gambai in the local dialect. He preached in the local dialect, right? And so, and my dad has an affinity for rural pastors.
Yeah.
The pastors who are, the churches in Africa, most of the stronger churches are in the rural parts of the country. Right?
Okay.
They hold fast
That's
to
where the work
to the
is.
Gospel, to the work.
The salt of the earth type people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so even as my father moved up the ranks of Christian organizations, he would always take the time to go hang with his father in the village, preach in the village. There's a seminary, in the village named after my grandfather. Not these big buildings. It's like 4 or 5 little, grass buildings in a remote place.
Yep.
But it's higher biblical education than what normally would be given. That's applicable to the region.
Okay.
So you don't need to be talking about these high I can't even remember who am I trying to remember here? You don't need deep theology when you're trying to preach the gospel in rural Africa.
Right.
Okay.
Right? It's simple. Who is Jesus? How does he apply to your life? How does he make it better? You don't need to know, what is pre-trib, post-trib, all of this other stuff you learn in seminary. That's for the higher ups if you want to spend time and luxury to argue those things.
So I'm having emanation of thought here, but it's like maybe that's a significant point as well, that religion and theology happens best at the granular level, not at this high institutional level. It's like in our society within Christianity, and this is coming off the last podcast with Chad, which was great.
Yeah,
the one that
y'all did.
I see you, Chad.
I missed it, but it was listened to it. It was great. Y'all did a great job.
Thanks.
Yeah, but it's the church has morphed over the last several hundred years, right? And it's morphed into this kind of high ideal institutional level, right? But maybe the best forms of the church are the older forms, which were very much integrated into communities, society. It's like religion as it.
Because it's easy to understand and easy to follow and apply to your life, I guess.
It's like religion can be a high ideal, or it can be this granular substance that you integrate with on a daily basis.
A moral compass.
And maybe that's why the communal aspects of religion. I don't know. That's just the emanations what I'm getting as you talk through this.
I think some of I don't know who said this, but they said if the early disciples were the disciples of now, Christianity would have never left Jerusalem.
Okay.
Because
why is that?
They understood that if you believe this, you're going to die for this. Right? You're going to get killed for this. You're going to take it to the hardest parts of the world.
These days have been like, oh, okay, well, I won't tell anybody.
Yeah, or I can't go to those certain areas because it's difficult. Now, I want to be, I think one of my maybe strengths but weaknesses is diplomatic. Like I try to understand.
Okay.
Some of the challenges of missions now, but back to I think really I want to say about the pastors in the rural communities, the application of the gospel hits I think harder for them on an everyday basis because of a lack of resources and really dealing with some of the hardships that are. So I'll give you an example. In the 70s, the president, his name is Francois, I can't remember his other name, but the first president of Chad, he was a school teacher, became president, changed everything back to rural. The capital was Fort Lamy, changed it in Jamena. And then he was requiring a lot of people to go back to the traditional faiths, go back and do initiation and stuff. Now, if you're a Christian at that time, you're saying no.
Yeah.
And then you're going to submit to the consequences of that. So I know my grandfather was in that time, and he lost people to that. That was a tough time.
Like real consequences.
Real consequences, Like when I became, my degree is in political science. And so when I went home, I was like, man, I lived again in government and stuff. And my dad, still being a father, is like, no. Because in Africa, when they kill your political career, it's not a figure of speech.
Yeah, they kill you are the one that's
you
dying.
are gonna that's not taken lightly at times in very tough situations. And I speak from what I know and speak from history of the colonial period and people who are wanting to make change, like Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso. You had Patrice Lumumba of Congo. You had other leaders who were trying to make this change, and they were willing to do it and handle the consequences of that, right?
Yeah, but and almost as a was it a populist response to colonialism or the end of colonialism in Chad?
Yeah, I mean, people wanted to, that surge of freedom throughout. I think in 1960, I think it was 17 African countries received independence.
Wow.
Because that whole wave was starting in the 50s and talking about freedom and, being able to govern our own, countries. I think it started also with Nkrumah of Ghana. He led that fight. And I'm trying to remember the guy of Central African Republic. So I'm learning a lot more of that African history early on, and who were those early freedom fighters who made that way for independence. Because colonialism was brutal. It was brutal both in the psychological, it was brutal in the actual things, especially in the Belgium Congo with what was happening there because of the vast resources.
Didn't that involve a railroad or something like that? Most of my African education does not come from public schools in Texas. It comes from Anthony Bourdain.
Okay, Anthony Bourdain.
Isn't that sad?
Yeah, that's true. Anthony Bourdain. I loved to watch how he mixed his love for food with the cultural component.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not a separation.
And presented you with facts.
It presents you with facts. So you know, I don't know about the railroad there, but I mean there was a lot of issues that the colonial powers knew they couldn't hold on to their kingdoms anymore. Right. Because now you had the war, right? You had World War I, especially World War II. Now you can't hold on. You're stretched thin with troops,
right?
With things all
Fighting
over the world. You know, the economic issues, the tide in thinking. Because one of the things is like when you educate, this is one of the. I don't care. So this is one of the things about educating people, and I've seen this across the board. If you're going to give somebody education, you're taking them from Africa or from anywhere, and you say they need education in order to lead and to govern.
Okay.
What do you seriously think that once they learn to learn, they're going to think exactly what you think? They're going to start challenging the things you told them, and you have new ideas and have new ways of going things, and then you get upset when that happens. You should be, no, that's what I wanted you to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Naturally.
And I've seen this in circles where like, well, you educated them. What did you think was going to happen if they truly were going to think for themselves?
Means they're thinking. Yeah, you're right. Thinking for themselves.
They're not going to agree with you.
You did your job.
And even then, you have to submit to their authority now in their place, in their country. It is theirs to run it as they so please, right? You can challenge it,
right?
But you don't want to be dictatorial now or colonial mindset in it.
Yeah. So colonialism, doing the thing it does best, does create an independent nation.
Does it?
In what sense? Are you playing the devil's advocate?
Yeah, I am. I'm forming a circle that turns in on itself. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So for colonialism to benefit from the country that it occupies, it has to educate the people in order to benefit it. But by educating the people to, let's use France.
Okay.
So if France educates Chad to the point where Chad can most benefit France, then Chad is going to gain what it needs to become.
It brings a self-awareness.
Yeah, it brings a self-awareness or a drive into that population. I don't know that that's actually true, but there's very few colonies right now.
I see what you're saying. I think there's two things. It presumes that the people there didn't have a self-awareness already.
Okay.
It was just it was a cultural self-awareness they understood.
Yeah.
You were looking through it your lens as assuming that they didn't have it.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, colonialism by nature, it has oppressive qualities. It's like, yes, I can educate you for my benefit, but I will still hold the resources. I will hold the things that could cause you to use those ideas to translate into actual action.
Keep you dependent.
Keep you dependent. Because if you look at some of the fighting in Africa, was when you educated these leaders to do what you wanted them to do, but then they were like, okay, I got to remember this guy's name. I think it's Michel, either Mozambique. I need to be corrected on this, but I think he was a doctor, educated to be a doctor, but wasn't getting opportunities to actually be a doctor, right? He's just going to be a doctor good enough for the colonial powers to do that, but they weren't going to like move him up and be the director of the hospital.
Keep him under thumb still.
Or send him over things.
It's hold him down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now I have all this education. I see all this opportunity you've been telling me about, but yet you're not going to let me into it. Well, you know what? I'm going to change that. I'm going to become a rebel and fight you on it because obviously dialogue is not working.
Well, I think that proves your point, right?
Yeah, right.
So it comes, it's a full circle. And you've given them this power, and now they're going to utilize it.
You're going to utilize it, or you're going to hold back the resources in order to to keep them from having change. But the change got too big in the 60s. I mean, you just couldn't. It wasn't tenable anymore.
Okay.
So independence began to happen. Yeah.
So some of my faith now in humanity comes from the idea of that truth does reign and oppressive systems will fall by their own very nature.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, is that true?
Oppressive systems will fall by their very own nature.
Yeah.
I think truth will prevail at some point. How it does it all the time, we don't know.
Yeah.
Even oppressive systems, the truth will come to light.
Yeah.
You have to have individuals willing to be the torchbearers of that truth and sacrifice a lot because, truth. So look at the civil rights movement here in the United States with Martin Luther King. So, a lot of it was going on, and then, you get television and radio. You'll go from radio to television, so people could actually now begin to see what was happening. And that began to change minds and hearts of individuals to get involved because you had a medium that can hear about it. It's different than when I can see it.
Yeah.
It's very different when I experience it.
Yeah.
Right? Then my involvement starts getting a little bit more, that challenge is more in my face. And now I have to I can't be stagnant. I can't be passive.
Yeah.
I have to now react because the truth is pushing me to do that. And the more you oppress a group of people, the more you begin to unveil your hand of suppressing the truth. Because, I think with the civil rights movement, you argue, and this goes to the Constitution in general, you argue the self-evident truth that all men are created equal, endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights. This is the truth that you will prevail as more and more you begin to suppress it.
Yeah.
Right? Because then you're arguing the humanity of individuals, but that humanity that you're refusing to others, or you're giving to some, you're not giving to others, it's just not going to hold.
Let me ask you this. In current times, do you think, and because you have a whole different perspective than we do, obviously, do you think that elements of colonialism
Close enough.
Colonialism still exists in America through political factioning, through political ideologies, through political identities.
This chance coming out.
Yeah, I think it even, let me start with that. It exists in Africa as well, in the sense of, it was a Zambian vice president. And I gotta get these names right because I hate talking about things without names. But he basically said when colonialism ended, he said, be careful. The colonizers come back and they'll be called investors. Right.
Okay.
Because now they're investing, and the investor, when it puts in money, gets to says what happens.
Yeah.
Even when they know it's not good for the country.
This is why I was asking about an influx of new tourists showing up in Africa. It's like,
good job bringing that full circle.
Right?
Yeah.
But those elements still exist here in America, right? Like we have a president now that has said, if you ain't voting for me, you ain't black.
Yeah, I heard that. I think I actually have a degree. I studied political science. Okay. So we're this like rabbit trail.
I like
that guy. I'm still stuck at 16 in Chad. We haven't got out of that yet. But my friend who came today, Tunde, he's a political science major as well. And he came because we wanted to talk about, I'm getting a resurgence in my interest in political science, why I went into it. It was to discuss, it was to be part of those debates on political philosophy, political theory. My degree wasn't really in the campaign portion of it. His was. Yeah. Mine was more like reading Socrates and Aristotle and how
philosophical
aspects, and governments work and stuff like that. And so what we want to do is talk about political things that are happening in Africa to bring more to, I don't know if it was you, Chance, to ask that question, get more people interested at a very deep level in Africa and Africans themselves, that they can stay attuned to those things. I think within the United States and understanding the political system and studying it in school, the Constitution, the preamble. I recently rememorized the preamble. I don't know if you saw that one. I remember memorizing that in 5th grade, and that was in a school that had that up on the wall, and I read it and I memorized it again, because the substance of that is, for me, is very powerful. It's the freedoms that
No
I think
doubt.
a lot of Americans have taken for granted. I'll say that they have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
In
100%.
ways, because you talk about coups, and maybe it's more coups can happen without firing a shot.
Mm-hmm.
You just begin to erode the freedoms of individuals slowly through laws that advocate that they willingly give their freedoms away under the guise of freedom and safety. And then the next thing you know, they wake up and they don't have it.
Yeah.
Because I tell you right now, once the government takes something from
They
you,
don't
it's
give it
not
back.
giving it back.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a reality,
That's a
not in
hard
America. That's a reality
Everywhere.
everywhere. All right.
And, you know, it's this idea prevails is that we've in the U.S. we have undergone a coup. You know, in the hearts and minds of the people, at the hands of media and content, right?
And not understanding, like doing the legwork of what your freedoms. So it's really interesting in schools that we don't teach history as much, or you don't teach the Constitution.
It's been a long time
You
since
didn't
I've been in
teach-
school, so I
I don't. In the schools I've been, that's kind of like a wayside. But to me, that's a way of helping people forget
Yeah.
that they are standing on something strong foundationally,
Sure.
for which will be their saving grace.
Yeah.
Right.
Once their hearts meet the words. Because there's the guy I used to follow in 2000, Alan Keyes.
Yeah.
He ran for president.
Yeah.
I loved a lot of his speeches, and he was just going back and forth. So it comes from him, a back and forth about the
What the
Constitution.
hell happened to him?
He was a
I don't
deep
know.
thinker.
He was
Yes,
a
he
deep
was.
thinker, right?
Yeah.
There was he really captivated me because of his deep thinking.
Yeah.
Right. And he was talking about, the violations that were going on at the minute the Constitution was being written. Like these guys were writing a document while violating every single word of that document.
It's true. Like John Adams being the classic example, like he came up, I forget what the acts were, but he basically put into law that you couldn't speak ill of the government. And it eventually got overturned, but he violated the First Amendment.
First Amendment.
Yeah, right out of the chute.
Yep. They
Yeah.
violated that all men are created equal.
Yeah.
Right.
And down by the Creator. But here's the thing I say. They were putting on paper something that they knew would hamstring them down the road.
Okay.
Generation after generation.
Yeah.
You have to be pretty stupid, in my opinion, or
Do you think they knew they were doing that?
Insightful
I
or
think
stupid?
insightful, maybe
Yeah.
a little bit of both, in
Or
the
they
sense
just-
that you're going to put something that it's going to hurt you later down the road.
But maybe I'm dead and gone, so I don't give a shit.
Maybe you don't.
Maybe that's the.
But
maybe
you've set a
that's their
bar
line of
that
thought.
other generations have to.
Sure. Yeah.
Generation after, and how can you say that generation after generation after generation was up against what was on this paper? Because the Constitution hasn't changed much. It's hard to change the United States Constitution.
Yeah.
Other countries, it's easy to change the Constitution. The president can wake up one morning and be like, you know what? Let's call a session together.
Yeah.
Let's revive, and we're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Checks and balances are a good thing here.
Checks
Oh,
and
man.
balances.
And I've been blown away recently as I've gone down the rabbit hole of understanding the significance of the American project on history, right? You know, it's like we had Western thought, right? And that's existed since the time of Socrates or before. Christianity meets Socrates, creates Western thought. And then from that emerged the American project, which was the putting into play democratic ideals and then honoring the sovereignty of the individual, right? Honoring the will of the individual as sovereign, and then systematizing that, and so I've just been in awe that has been the development that we've worked into, like this American project, and it is world changing and world stabilizing, even as it's starting to crumble. I feel like, or I worry.
Yeah, I can understand where I was coming from. I think it's a delicate balance between the individual and the communal. Like,
Yeah.
the
Oh, wow.
rights
Yeah.
and the communal living. It's that delicate balance that the United States has been struggling for many years. Now, I'm gonna tell you, immigrants see this. Now,
Okay.
a lot of these debates that happen, I don't watch too much political stuff. I like just to read the foundations and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But amongst immigrant groups, I mean, they come to the United States for a reason.
Sure.
People vote with their feet, right? They come here for economic opportunities that their home countries may not provide. They come here for a certain level of political freedom, a right to choose on a number of issues. They're here for a reason. They're not necessarily here because they like the American culture. Right?
Yeah, what the hell is the American culture?
I
don't
Baseball
even,
and apple pie.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know anymore.
That's also an interesting question. I think, the way, if you talk to immigrants, the way that once you used to have like relating with parents, the respect for our elders. So I think the people don't, I'll say this, maybe people don't want to leave their cultures, but unfortunately, the way they do life, but unfortunately, where they find themselves when you still have to provide for your family and you're looking for educational opportunities, that's the underlying factor that pushes you to come to the United States as a refuge. It's not perfect by any nature.
No, we're still figuring a lot of shit out, right?
Yeah, it's figuring. And I like, you seen that movie Friday Night Lights?
Oh yeah.
And he talks about perfection when he talks to his group of the football players before they got second half, and he talks about you're perfect. But what he says perfect is when you can look each other in the eye and say, I did everything I could have done. There's not one more thing I could have done.
Yeah.
I love that phrase.
Wow.
There's not one more thing I could. So that's why America's still working towards perfection.
Yeah.
Because it's not, until you get to the point, there's not one more thing I could have done. You're still perfect, right? It's not that you do everything right.
Yeah, and we're still a very young country too.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah,
compared to Rome,
we have a lot of progress to make, but I think it's a great time to be alive. One, because we can have these discourses and these debates and these talks without having to worry about getting shot in the back of the fucking head, too.
True.
Versus 100 years ago or so. You never know.
And I think a lot of immigrants, at least I'm part of the African Think Tank, which is a group here in Dallas. We have other chapters: Houston, DMV, Charlotte, and Atlanta. And it's really engaging with a lot of Africans here in the United States, and particularly here in DFW where I run. Is like, and the idea is that we're working together to support one another economically, support each other in the education systems, really help individuals to integrate here into the United States through our perspective and those who've been here before. And I think in speaking about America, the conversation is different than speaking with Americans about America.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
It's that you can recognize, I think what Chan said, you can recognize the faults of this country, but you can also see the opportunities at the same time. Sometimes you speak with Americans and all they see is the faults.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at some point it's like, hold up. None of you are moving anywhere else.
Right. Yeah. Nobody's leaving.
No one's leaving.
No.
But that's kind of been the course that the media wants you to go down, right? Like you turn on the TV, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks. It's like you can't really get away from that mentality of the bullshit. There's nothing positive. Okay, maybe one or two things on a news segment that are positive, but there's no outlook that's in a positive light if you're looking from the perspective of your home and your sanctuary into the world through your TV.
Yeah.
do we have a responsibility as individuals to work towards changing that, and how do we?
Fuck yeah, I don't know, but I just hearing him talking about the African think tank, there's a juncture that needs to happen between groups like that and like rural Texas, rural America.
Yeah, rural.
We're not rural. We don't get
rural.
rural. Tough word for everybody. Rural. But
Yeah,
how
go
awesome
ahead.
would it
Go
be
ahead.
to have your group come out and sit around and bullshit with us around the campfire?
Yeah.
Because I bet there's going to be a lot of similarities that we would have no consciousness of knowing before we have the conversation.
Yeah. And I think as a substitute teacher, I get an opportunity. I like subbing, and that's what I do presently full time, with soft skills to integrate my African culture in the classrooms I'm in, right? So if I'm in a history class, I ask a lot of the kids about, tell me how much you know about American history.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sad to.
I was going to say,
It's like they don't know very
not
much,
much.
unfortunately. But I think it's not to their fault as well. There's other mitigating circumstances, but it gives me an opportunity for those who listen to share about
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm from Africa. I write my name on the board. I say, hey, where do you think I'm from? And some people say, you know, Asia. No. Let's work this again. So Africa. Okay, what part of Africa? And I'll say something in French. Bonjour, comment allez-vous?
Mm-hmm.
Right, and then just work that, and then use that as a segue to talking about things happening around the world.
Yeah,
right.
That's
I
cool.
try that in some of the classes. That's a soft way
Sure.
of engaging students. Right here I've taught in Decatur. I taught in Bridgeport. I really enjoy it.
Decatur was better though.
Decatur, yeah, the middle school in Decatur. I really enjoy
Even
that.
20 years later, the division between the Big Sandy still exists.
So yeah, I want, if you have a global perspective, and I have to remember that I've been very fortunate to have lived around the world, several countries in Africa. I've lived in 6 U.S. states. So even the United States, I know a lot.
Okay, where are the,
Which one was the best?
Texas.
Yeah, there you go.
This is my third time coming back.
Yeah.
So I lived in Texas. We moved home. I came back to Texas. I went from Texas, after I graduated, from Texas to Washington State. From Washington State to Wisconsin. Then from Wisconsin, I moved back to Texas. And then from Texas, I went home to Chad. And then I moved here and went to Michigan. Oh, in between, I lived in Iowa.
You love those cold states up there, don't you?
Oh man, the frozen tundra. You know, I think they here we still call the Civil War the War of Northern Aggression. Yeah, where did that?
These people just wanted to get warm.
The War of Northern Aggression.
Right.
They just wanted warm.
That's
So-
fine.
Until they get into Texas in August, and they're like, it's a little too warm.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
little too hot.
So I had a question in listening to what was that other podcast that you were on? Something about smoke, smoking cigars.
Oh, holy smokes!
Holy smokes! Yeah,
Yeah.
great podcast by the
Yeah.
way. And
Oh, so you listened to the? Oh yeah, okay. I did that a year ago, year and a half ago.
Yeah, I think
it was,
so.
okay. So yeah, yep.
yeah. So what's your calling? So your job is a substitute teacher, but what's your calling, and how is that different? Or how are the two related? Man, I'm asking some really heavy.
No, I think you're asking because I'm thinking and shifting through a lot of things trying to answer what's the next steps in my life, in the sense that I spent many years in the trying to get into the nonprofit sector, especially in Christian circles, and for particular reasons. I actually went to seminary, but I didn't go to seminary because I wanted to preach. That was not
Trying to
my
get that
intent.
Joel Osteen money, are you?
Nah.
I see.
Don't get me started on him, because I'm like, nah, because that's theologically wrong.
Oh yeah.
All right, that makes no sense.
Oh, Houston is flooding. Don't come to my
That's
church.
like that.
Don't come
Don't
here.
come here. No, but I really wanted, at the time I went, I really wanted to know the history and the theology behind my faith.
Okay.
Right, because coming from a Muslim country, when you're debating or talking to other people, you need to understand more than Jesus loves me in some discussions. And then my hope was at time to work in a lot of either Christian organizations or churches around organizational leadership and development, because the degree I did was a degree in educational ministries, and that looked at adult education, so how do adults learn? And then it touched on organizational and leadership development. So I could have gone and done a PhD in that, but I was like, I'm straight, I'm good. We that's was that permanent head damage PhD? Someone said, and,
True story.
I see, and I didn't see it would bring additional value. So I did that, and I think in the recent years, a situation happened when with my family when we were in Zambia. That really began a journey of reflecting and thinking differently, right?
Okay.
It has negatives and positives. And so, I came back from that really damaged and trying to navigate still through those situations and figure out, substitute teaching as I figure out what I'm going to do next. I have a heart for Africa, so I love the African think tank. I took that role. It's a non-paid role, but I believe in the leadership we have. In a woman by the name of Sidonie and an American lady by the name of Carrie, who started this organization, really developed it, and they really regained helped me to regain trust in organizations, and so I trust the work they're doing, and that they asked me to be a part of this, and so I put a lot of my energy behind it, and hopefully we'll get the funding necessary so that it can become a full-time job and really working with. So if you want things, working with the African community, both in the United States and continue to do stuff in Africa, really at the grassroots level, and changing the narrative by teaching Africans to tell their stories, contending with stories with things that are happening in Africa with organizations here in the U.S., but also not having a complaining attitude, because you can talk about history all you want, right?
Yeah.
Like the French did this, and the Americans did this, and the whites did this, and all of this stuff, which is categorically true.
Yeah.
But how does that, in the end, change your situation presently if it's just complaining, not utilizing that to come up with a way of moving forward?
That's another thing. America's like right in the middle of like the victim mentality, and it doesn't enable anything. It doesn't enable any change or any new progress.
Are we emerging?
I hope so. God, I hope so, because I'm tired of the bitching.
I mean, we see the negative aspects of it all the time. We talk about the negative aspects all the time. But just like, the imposing yourself with the 24-hour news cycle, it's all just negativity. Yeah. But my experience at the granular level, as I talk to people, is that we are in a sense emerging.
I think so. I hope so. Yeah.
Okay.
For the better. Yeah.
I think it's just taking responsibility.
Yeah.
And those are things that I think transcend culture anywhere, even with Africans, because most of the engagement, like to give you a chance, I love opportunities to talk about Africa to communities that don't necessarily have access but have interest, right? And how do we do that? But also calling out the African community and saying for a long time that we have also had a victim mentality. And it does not just in one culture or in one group.
Yeah.
That we have to now step up and do the things we need to do, both otherwise overseas, or we're just going to have the same thing.
There's no forward
momentum at all. And our next generation, I think some of the challenges, especially with African parents bringing their kids here to the U.S., I see this in the schools, is now you're dealing with cultural kind of, the same thing I happen going to Chad, but it's happening the other way. And so how can we be a supporting resource for those parents and for those kids as well? So, yeah.
So I have a little adjunct here, but what's the difference in reflection and rumination?
Reflection and rumination.
Yeah. This is a question I have going on in my head. Okay. And it's a topic of conversation or dialogue between myself and my business partner.
Okay.
And so that's, I don't know what the answer is, but what do you think the answer might be?
Well, you have to explain about what is it?
Rumination.
Rumination.
Yeah, rumination, which is kind of like sitting in the shit.
You're just dwelling, right?
Yeah, it's like sitting in the shit.
Okay.
And it's like, okay, everybody has history. We as a people have history. And it's like maybe for some reason reflection is valuable, but rumination's not valuable.
Like if you punch me, my reflection will be like, Doc got mad at me and punched me over something. Maybe I should. What did I do wrong, or what did I do to piss him off? Oh well,
so reflection's pointed back at the self.
Towards you.
Yeah, and if I'm ruminating on it, like screw Doc. What the hell's wrong? What is his problem?
What did that person do? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The same thing.
And you can't leave that mindset.
Huh. I think because a lot of I think that I'm going through. I see personally is like reflecting of things I could have done better, or could have.
So it is like reflection. Reflection is in the word itself. The meaning is it is self-reflective, right? So that's interesting.
We had a conversation with a good friend once, and he brought up, like, I don't really know an eloquent way to put this, but this friend is a professor, and he ran into a bunch of students. I forget. Do you remember what the story was? Anyways, they got mad at him over something, but what he ultimately did was the truth. It was the right thing, and he conveyed this to his students. Well. And he was telling Heath, he's like, and going forward, I was thinking about what could I have done better? What could I have done different this time? And he pointed out starkly, like, this is the point where you need to realize what you did was the right thing. They are the ones that need to understand.
Heath is good at that.
They have to change.
Yeah.
You
pointing out the essential element.
You didn't do anything wrong. You gave them a hard truth.
Okay.
Now they have to deal with it, and they've got to change. Okay. You didn't, and that's like, it's where we're at. I think now is like, oh, well, I hurt somebody's feelings. What do I need to do to change? Well, maybe the ball is in your court and you made the wrong decision.
Mm-hmm.
You told a lie. But if you told the truth and it was a hard truth, that person has to
take it. Yeah, there's a lot of hard truths
that
need to be told.
Yeah,
I think we recognize that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whenever we don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's always like this self rumination of.
No, I was right.
Well, what did I do wrong? What could have I done different?
Okay.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, I think there's just an inclination that we sometimes want to just be right in everything, right?
Yeah,
there's a kind of selfishness to that. And
that
circle
circle back around
things
the
that
security.
I violate, right? We often speak of the very thing we're violating and get convicted of that, and we continue to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
On that, I think.
Oh man. Okay, so yeah, that's tough. Yeah,
where did that question even come from?
That's the stuff
philosophical.
Freaking lay awake
yeah.
thinking about.
So we've been going down some deep holes.
Yeah,
I've just been sitting over here.
Hat on.
Yeah, so get ready to take it off because all I've been sitting over here talking is my favorite subject is food.
Ooh.
Hey, before we get to food though, hold on.
Yeah.
We're going to food, but you brought stuff.
Yes,
Yeah,
I wanted to give okay. I think so culturally. When you are invited somewhere, you bring something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think in the U.S. it's somewhere they bring wine or food to a location. Yeah. You know, but it's not if it's just for wine or food. But in Africa, just in general,
right?
You know, and if someone stays with you, you give them a gift, and it's not like you buy a gift. Sometimes you give a gift of something you own. So, for example, I was going to Nigeria one year, and it was like 2 a.m. We crossed the border. The border patrol is asleep, but we had to get across anyway. It caused us problems on the way back, but that's a different
sneak
story.
Past this guy.
So at like 3, we get there. We get a taxi guy, and they're like, everything's closed. There's really nothing that's open 24/7. And finally, this guy says, "Just come to my house." Like I don't know him, but I'm with my cousin, and we go to his house, and he hosts us. And in the morning, he takes us to the bus station to go on the next trip. And he'd been wearing this shirt said propane, and with a fist, propane, and like this. Oh. And there's an army kind of shirt. And I just made a comment to say, hey man, that's a great shirt. Didn't think of it. We get there, he had either washed that shirt, ironed it, and gifted it to me.
Oh wow.
And gave it to me. I'm like, I just mentioned it was a good shirt. I just knew you the night before. But those are not one-offs. Those are things that just tend to run because it's a way of developing relationships. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
A way of giving back. It's a way we operate. And so actually, I'll start with what you mentioned first. Ooh, my sister's gifting you this.
There it
as
is.
I agree with this hot sauce here.
There it is.
Can I hand it over here?
That keyword is hot.
That looks hot.
She's made a new batch.
Even it says hot.
You know, it's hot on there. You'll try. You let me know if you give an order.
Bring it around.
It's like $20. And so I know Chad ordered one, so she's working at Chad Miller, so he's working on that.
Yeah,
I want to dabble in this.
Yeah.
So how did the relationship with Chad transpire? Not Chad the country, Chad the owner of the Chief.
Man, I love Chad. I think
I'm scared to open that.
Be careful! Don't rub your eyes after doing that, man. But you know, you can let me know. Just don't put a lot.
Hey,
on
but
it.
before we go, wait, before you taste it, smell it and tell me what.
Tell me it's you got it.
What do you get?
Oh man.
Me and Chad spent about 15 minutes.
Oh, just trying to figure out. I should ask. I didn't even ask my
based.
sister what she put in it. I'm gonna get the ingredients next time.
Well, there's some mango qualities.
I can smell it over. I can smell it over here. No, we finally got Parmesan cheese.
Yes, he mentioned that.
Yeah, it does smell like Parmesan cheese.
I should ask her. I never asked her. I'm gonna ask her.
That's what we finally. Yeah.
You all right?
I can smell it. It's good.
Strong?
No, it's really good flavor wise.
The best essence of berry or fruit or something.
Yeah, the flavor of it was amazing.
It's like got some fruity essences.
But that's where it gets you.
Yeah,
because you're like, oh my god, this is really good. This is really good, and then all of a sudden you stop eating, and then
wow. It's like there's some cheese aspect. To it too.
Yeah, some kind of
Okay.
Ooh,
You need some water? We got to stay on this podcast, man.
Yeah,
the flavor is
Oh, yep.
just for a fingertip. The flavor's a
I know.
punch, man. It's all
is.
there.
Wow.
Yeah,
I just got a little bit, like just a little dabble in it.
So me and Chad had pork rinds.
Ooh,
So we're just going
just
to town
cooking on
on
there?
pork rinds, and then I had about 4 of them, and,
Yeah.
then I stopped, and I was just
Red. You got red, huh?
So
Yeah.
so
that lingers.
yeah,
wow,
it
if you
does.
wanted to like buy that, what's it called? Like
hot sauce.
Just hot sauce, right? I don't think this is something new she's doing. I
so
think
you
she made the
Google
first 10 and
Chad
then,
and
So
hot
is
sauce.
hot sauce like this? Is that big? Because I don't remember having any when I went. Is that big in Africa?
Oh, it's big in
Hot sauces?
Africa.
Okay,
Yeah, they might have diluted it for you. The
They
white
probably
man.
did. Oh,
It's
white,
still-
Whitey's
Yeah.
down there.
Especially Nigeria, they
Now-
put hot sauce in everything.
Right. Well, we had I can't remember what it was.
Fufu?
The big. No. Well, we had the pounded yam.
Pounded yam, yeah,
but it was
yep.
like a red sauce based.
Okay.
That we was dipping
Dipping
it in.
in, yeah.
Now that was pretty spicy.
Yeah,
But it wasn't like
it wasn't that.
hot
Yeah,
sauce, yeah.
They maybe they again
Probably
toned
did.
it down for
Yeah,
you.
probably
But
did.
Nigerians love their spices, man.
Oh, yeah.
they
Yeah,
don't
for
play
sure.
with that.
That flavor packs a punch for sure. So, what would you garnish this with, or what foods would you garnish with this?
Pretty much like fish.
Okay,
Is huge
Ooh,
with
yeah.
that. Goat meat.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes just regular sauce. Just put it in there and dip it just to give it a kick.
Right.
Others will put it on the side to dip it so you don't do what Chance is doing.
it's as hot as a straight up
And
jalapeno.
like a little bit. It can
goes-
last a long time because you're only doing like little dabs of it.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not trying to put a whole,
That's fantastic.
I think hot sauce in the U.S. is just more like flavor
Yeah,
for West Africans.
it
Not
is.
like, this is not hot.
No.
This is flavor
This
and
is-
then some.
Then
Yeah.
some. You know, oh, you got to get some water, doc.
Get some of that whiskey.
It's-
White boy palate right
That's
here.
right. That's right. I got here, this is a flag of Chad.
Yeah.
Like a Chad, sweet.
And for y'all to put up, I am going to apologize and just be honest. I once knew what each of the colors stood for, and I just didn't have time to do it to refresh my memory.
Okay.
But at least to represent my Chadian people
Oh
here, put the
Okay.
Chadian, and then to represent.
Well, now we have to boost this
Yeah,
in Chad.
Mm.
That's cool. Where are we going to put this?
Oh, I think we skipped. Let me just assume we're on Chad. So I met Chad when I actually moved out here. It was, I had heard that he was opening the Chief from a friend, and I think one day I just pulled up there. I saw his car out there. He drives that BMW or whatever. And
Yeah, that yuppie car.
yeah, he trying to. I like, man, he's trying to be. He looked at me suspect. And I was like, I understand, bro. I understand. But he took a picture with me, and how he does this.
Yeah.
Oh,
Pointing
yeah,
at
he
you all the
points
time.
at you,
It's like that picture. And so when it opened up, I just started hanging out there and getting to know him. He's such a impressionable individual, meets
Yeah.
everybody at the door.
Yeah.
Has
Agreed.
great conversation. Can pick up on people's cues, whether, they need some time not to say anything and so they can go do something else. But to have an atmosphere in a place where you forget that they sell cigars or it's a bar, it's just
Yeah.
a place to go hang out
Yeah.
sometimes because you
Yeah.
just need a space to be.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so I've done that a couple of times. And even if I'm not purchasing anything, I go back there because of that atmosphere that he provides,
Yeah.
And so, him and his wife, Heather, they do a phenomenal job in really welcoming individuals into this space. So, so that's Chad. So I gave him a map of Chad.
Yeah.
So he hangs that in there. So you got a country named after you. I
That's
don't
right.
even think he knew there was Chad before. I told him there's a
Really?
country that's like, it's just Chad.
That's
This
awesome.
is to represent
Oh, man.
Africa. Oh, I
check
think
that
it.
out.
Oh, I think it tore on the bottom, but you can just
we can fix
it.
That fist. But this is Africa. I gave.
Yeah.
You said
he-
South Africa wasn't part of Africa.
Oh yeah, it's
There you
falling
go.
off. Oh man, I'm sorry, my South African folks. We love you. We're still part of us. So
Yeah, we'll fix it for sure.
I have a cousin who does this bag in Chad, and I like it because you can roll it up
Yeah.
and put it in the
that's
bag
cool.
right here. So
Awesome.
I'll
Wow.
let you
thank
grab
you.
that, and I think she just used look like fish string.
Yep,
to
yep.
attach that.
Yeah, we'll get that.
Yeah, we
fixed.
can
Okay.
fix that, no
Now
problem.
we got to
Yeah,
figure out a
to hang
badass
up.
place to hang that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And here's the
no.
bag for it
Awesome.
as well.
And that ain't
Wow,
going back in
thank
that
you.
bag. That's going to be on display. That's
Yeah,
going to
it
be
is.
in one of the backgrounds of these cameras for sure.
Here, I'm going to put this over here.
Thank you, Reuben. That's awesome.
And one more thing.
Oh, more.
So, that was the right ones, yeah. So actually, my cousin got back from Chad yesterday,
Oh wow.
and I called him up because as I was coming, I was like, man, I want to give these guys a gift. So originally, I was going to do a painting, guys. You guys have a nice painting or a nice picture of like it's a cell tower or radio tower or a sea? 'Cause I love
Yes.
that.
You know how we got that painted?
How'd you get that?
Artificial intelligence.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So I was actually give it to an artist because I did a thing on an artist. I said, bro, how much is it cost for you to paint this? As a gift for him. It's like time ran out on that one. And then I was like, oh, my cousin's in Chad. And so I called a friend. I said, hey, man, I remember I get these knives from the marketplace that a lot of people use, especially the Muslim community, to do everything with, whether it's cut rope, to go hunting and stuff. And so Thursday, I think he ran really quickly and found them and got it to my cousin who flew out Friday to get here Saturday. And so I picked him up. And so I'm gifting you guys directly from Chad from 2 days ago. There's 2 small ones and a big one, so you're gonna have to fight over it.
I want the big one.
It's so this is traditional.
Holy
A lot of
shit.
you can hunt with this. You use it. It's multi-purposed,
Okay.
Dang.
and so you can still smell the leather.
We have a
you
lot
want
of
to grab
wild
it so
pigs.
you don't nobody grab. There you go.
Thanks, brother.
All right.
That's
Man,
beautiful.
this
So a
is
little bit of Chad. So that was in Chad 2 days ago.
Wow, that's awesome.
man, this is great.
It'll
Thank
go
you.
with my.
Yeah.
It'll go great with my Nigerian machete.
Yeah, and okay.
Ooh, that thing.
That's-
And that little
No joke.
hole in the
Uh-huh.
cell, I think in the what do you call it?
Oh,
There's a word for it. I can't. So, let me show you. So
yeah, this.
yeah, this.
Yeah,
I
the
can't remember.
sheath.
The sheath. That's the word.
Yeah.
You can normally if you can run a string through there and either put it around or traditionally just some guys will do it and hang it around
yeah.
like this
Interesting.
and be able to pull it out under there. So it's multi-purpose. It's if you need to get into a fight, I'm not advocating that. If you need to cut a
We have
rope, if you need to cut an animal,
awesome.
We have
it
a
just
lot of wild
serves-
boars
wild boars,
here, so
whatever.
yeah,
they are
absolutely.
sharp though.
Yeah,
I
they
just
are.
use them as decoration, but they
So,
are still
Man, that's
usable.
legit.
The
It's
snare
a-
drum behind you, the darker one it's got the burst. That is Tama's down low.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get around and point at it
Okay.
right here.
Yeah, that one right there. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
So that one, if you look at all the details, get back on.
Yeah.
That one is named the Maasai Warlord.
Oh.
Now, what
okay.
country do the Maasai
The
hail
Maasai is out of Kenya.
from? Okay, did not know that, but I know of them because of that drum, and they did like a series of these drums dedicated to cultures that have these type of warriors.
Okay. Yeah, they are a warrior. I think for jumping high.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, the Maasai.
Okay.
Kenya's a beautiful place, beautiful country. Hope to get out there sometime. So yeah.
So Africa is responsible for giving us rhythm.
Yes. Yeah, if you listen to any type of modern music, Afro-Cuban beats, jazz, a lot of this stuff came from Africa.
Yeah, like Africa is the essential element that infused what became jazz.
Yeah, blues,
Yeah.
everything. It
What
all,
became rock and roll.
now now it all just sucks.
Sure.
But, yeah.
But the essential elements were
With the drum
Rhythm.
beat, the
Yeah.
rhythm and the community. I mean, it sent
Yeah.
messages. It's way to especially before any type of thing. I still use now. It's like it can be used to for war. As tribes coming in, it can use to announce births. It can use to communicate a number of things. And so even for dancing, like every night in the village when I went, you'd always hear the drums. I'd sit there and you can hear the drums in the distance.
Man.
As people are dancing, whatever.
It's like, what's that like?
And I love it. I love going to, because you'll sit there, it's pitch dark because there's no electricity. So if I go to my village, it's just pitch dark, but you can see the fires that families have and that are lit. Right? And so one thing you can do to light your own fire, if you're going to start it, what you do is this communal thing. You'll send a young person to go grab one of the lighted sticks from there to bring back so you can light your fire. And then you may be sitting there and kids come and, hey, we need a fire. So they'll take it and light, and that's how sometimes the community working together has a fire. for the home every evening. So
That's pretty cool.
it's village life is pretty cool.
And you can see the stars.
You can you can see the stars.
Night sky viewing has got to be fantastic.
That's how you guys have. So if you're out in West Texas, man, just love the view of the stars.
Yeah.
You can look up and see some stuff. That's changing. But
how do we better infuse our own culture with the more positive elements of Africa? It's like some of the things that
you have conversations.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's exactly right. I do. But some of the best things that we have are directly infused through Africa. And the most the easiest for me is the music aspect, because that's the one I most readily identify, but there have been other things.
Yeah, I think music and food, and we'll talk I think about that. And I think invitations like this, for me, I really appreciate the invitation, because it gives a platform opportunity to speak to individuals who watch this because I think one of the things about people is that they're interesting and they have multiple interests. I just don't look at Heath and see whiskey bros. He may have other interests that over time, you like going to the opera, or you like going to, but you don't look at a group and say or an individual just thinks one thing.
He's not even drinking whiskey today.
I haven't even had any tonight.
Yeah, and those conversations, and then to open up spaces like this for others to speak and force your audience, if they can listen or not, but force the diversity things in really great conversations, right? And so to have more of that, because even with the African think tank, one of the things I was telling our executive directors, like, we need to really talk about the diversity of Africa beyond Black Africa. Because when I look at the room, it's mostly Black Africans. But that doesn't represent Africa. When people think of Africa, that's what they think.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's a diversity of races.
That's true.
In Africa. If you think about South Africa, you even think outside, if you think about Zambia and Zimbabwe and Botswana, who have white populations, because of the history there, and they're Africans, they're second, third, fourth generation. They've lived there, they've established a family. You have Indians, you have all of that we need to speak to, because those are also issues that we don't talk about very much as in the West, because it's very prevalent with its history, and that's been very just through media and historical things. But like history is not linear. So when I was teaching U.S. history to 1877, or some of the Texas history, I would say to kids, like, okay, this was happening here, but at the same time this was happening in this part of the world. Right? It's like, this, what's happening in this? Because all of that is interconnected. You have to do the homework to see how that really resonates with the kind of a global view, because we're a global community. I mean, this world is not small. Like, this Whiskey Road show will be seen by my friends in chat.
I'd love that.
They're gonna pop it up like, Reuben,
awesome.
Who are you sitting with? Who are these dudes?
What are these dudes?
You know your dad's a pastor. Why they got whiskey and cigars and talking about stuff that there's that you can't. But it's good because it exposes even for Africans who have maybe only engaged with one type of American. Right. A lot of Africans have one type of American, either from the missionary community, and that's what they know. Until they meet others from different other communities. Like, this country's diverse as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
how many are in your African think tank?
We get about an average of 60 plus people that come through.
Holy cow, yeah.
We meet once a month, so we're going to meet on the 29th.
Now, is that 60 just in the Dallas chapter? Or?
Yeah, in the Dallas chapter.
Oh, okay.
In the Dallas chapter. The newer chapter, Dallas is the older chapter, so we're in our second year. The newer ones were started here in January. And they'll come in and out, so the idea there is that so we do 12 of them a month, so last Friday of every month. So in January, we had a main speaker come in. So one individual will come in and African and speak through their lens on a specific issue. In February, we have what we call panel discussion. So we'll invite 2 to 4 people. And so since it was Black History Month, we actually invited a Black American who'd been to Africa. First time in 1979, Nigeria was his first trip there. He just recently was in Zambia, which was his second trip. And then he brought 3 other Black Americans to there. It's an interesting perspective speaking about Africa.
I bet so.
To Black Americans and getting their viewpoint of it. And then we had a young man, Junior, who's actually a Nigerian. He's American now, but he came to the U.S. when he was 2, and now he's a councilman for the city of Grand Prairie, Texas. So seeing that, came as an immigrant, loved politics, age of 22, became a councilman.
Wow.
Yeah.
Getting into that.
Involved,
yeah. Right? Because he knows his parents couldn't get involved back in Nigeria, or there were other things. And so we have that panel discussion, Q&A. This month is our focus groups. So we have 5 focus groups, if I can remember them: healthcare, education, business, real estate, and I can't remember the 5th one. So participants will come, and then they'll get an opportunity to go into one of those groups and have a conversation with our group leader, who's an African, who can tell the perspective in that thing. And then the next month will be our it's our African pitch night. So if there's someone who wants to pitch an idea to the African community for support, then they can do that. It's not guaranteed, but it's just laying that into that basis. So again, with the African Think Tank, where our objective is to really give a platform to Africans here to really engage with one another. Because what's interesting, even with Africans, I tell there's a lot of ignorance amongst us. Right? I met a bunch of Eritreans. I don't remember meeting one Eritrean in my time in Chad. And Eritrea is north of us, right?
Okay.
Or meeting even Cameroon. I meet a lot of Cameroons here. So the United States has provided us a platform to connect with each other in a way that we won't be able to connect at home. So why don't we utilize it? And I'm always amazed when people want to travel to Africa and say, I want to go to Ghana and I want to go. Why don't you go to Ghana here in Texas? Find the Ghanaian community and hang out with them.
Yeah.
Right.
Find the Kenyan community and hang out with them. Because what you're doing there is actually learning some stuff as a precursor to your trip.
So that's a valuable insight.
Right. Yeah.
How do blokes like us, whitey blokes like us,
Are we British
seek
now?
that out?
Are you a bloke?
That's
Bloke,
bloke.
Ain't no bloke.
I've been watching Ted Lasso. That's so like how?
Oh, they're there.
How do you do that?
We help with that. We can help if people are open to understand. And most of those communities have events
I would love to eat
that we
some
will
African
post.
food.
Oh man, they can throw down.
Yeah, with some of your
man.
guys from the think tank ever want to like come out here and sit on the hilltop out here a nice evening, have a campfire.
We can make it happen.
Yeah.
We can make it happen.
That would be awesome.
And then telling those stories, you just tell those stories and be like, oh, that really happened. How can we do something different? And that's the way you change. I think at the very local grassroots level, people can generally get along.
Yeah.
oh yeah,
If they give the opportunity to
definitely.
talk around food, around you will find you will find common issues of struggle and of triumph.
Right.
Right? You will find that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just need to be in the right spaces.
yeah.
Not these spaces of individuals who are deliberately trying to keep individuals opposite one another.
Right.
Act like you've never gone through that. Yeah, I've gone through it differently. You know, you've never. I think I'm very understanding. You know, of the struggles in Africa and of the poverty that exists. You know, but to say there's no poverty in America
Yeah.
is not true.
No, it's not.
That's a lie. And so you get these individuals coming from Africa. It's like, oh, America. They can look it from their lens. But you got to. I tell Africans there is literally poverty in America.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And this is what it looks like. It's
Yeah.
not the same way that we perceive it.
No.
And we have a different way of addressing it. You know, to most. I'll give you an example. So around food, when I moved back, it was so hard those first couple of years to throw away food. Like it bothered me to no end.
Oh, yeah.
I take it home, I'd eat it or finish it. I get small portions.
Yeah.
Right. It's like and eating 3 times a day. Because I remember in Chad, we didn't eat 3 times a day. I'd be up in the morning, maybe have some bread and some tea. And then you don't eat it again until like 2:00 in the afternoon because everything's made fresh.
Yeah.
You have to go to the market, buy the food, come back, cook it, prepare it, and then you eat. And then in the evening, you may just have some simple porridge, and that's the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that's for us just in the city. Now, that has changed over the years with a lot more income coming in and stuff. But imagine the village. I was in a village when I still remember till this day. We went there for it was like a local mission conference, and it's just in this village. And so we're eating our food, and the kids from that village were just like hanging around.
Yeah.
Because they were waiting.
Yeah.
They were waiting for the food. And so once we finished, there was a little bit left, and this woman picked it up to take it in the kitchen. They rushed her and were reaching for it, and it fell on the ground, and they were still eating it off the ground. Wow. Because I know for them, they may not have eaten all day yet.
Yeah, that's their first meal.
That may be their first meal.
Holy cow.
Right? And when you're in those situations, because I'm going back to the city tomorrow or the next day.
Yeah.
Right? And so that really, it does two things. One, when Americans, the way you can show support for things you may not be able to contribute to. So, for example, you may not be able to change a situation in hunger overseas, but the way you treat your food here shows respect and acknowledge of that. And that's a big thing to me, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not wasting food and throwing away, you're just saying, oh, I can't do anything for that group.
Yeah.
But I can show appreciation of what they don't have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes
totally.
perfect
Because I grew
Right.
up, my mom telling me, think about the starving kids in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would finish and I'd had food left on my plate. And yeah, it's okay. So that's given me a little bit of a complex too,
Mm-hmm.
psychological complex. But yeah, my mom would tell me it's think
Yeah.
about the
Yeah,
kids in
same.
Africa.
We don't waste food. We
that's
keep
good.
our leftovers. We eat 2 or
Yeah.
3 days
Yeah.
later. I don't fucking waste it.
And another concept that I want to mention is because somebody's poor, I think a lot of organizations do this poorly. Because someone's poor, don't forget their humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes we treat poor people as like they have no humanity. And I give an example. So there's a friend of mine. You may see this. So we were in the village, and this lady came and gave us 2 chickens. Now, if you understand in the village, giving 2 chickens is a big deal
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
because that's livelihood, either
Right.
eggs or something. They can they're not.
that's a
It's, now,
Yeah,
it's
the
a
chicken.
resource.
It's a
now.
resource.
Yeah.
Now, my American friend, which I understand, was going to say no, right? And he was going to say no on the grounds that he knows that these individuals are poor and that
Right.
they're going to need. So his concept was, no, I'm doing a good thing. We talk about doing a good thing because they need the food. I said, take it. Accept it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't say no. Because what are you doing? Just because they're poor, do they not have a heart of giving?
Yeah.
Will that not then feel good that they actually gave you something?
Yeah.
You're going to rob them of their blessing
Yeah.
because of your logic
Yeah.
of them being hungry? Take it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true.
And we treat individuals like this.
It's belittling.
It's belittling,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
right? So you feel good. I said you feel good when you give something to somebody. You
Uh-huh.
think just because they're poor they don't have that same feeling? Right?
Oh,
So we
man.
took it. We can kill and give it to somebody else. We can give them that opportunity to feel good.
That makes me wonder. It really gives me
Yeah.
puts doubt in my mind. I wonder if in the past at any time anybody that I know, if I consciously said no to something they wanted to give me.
Oh, no doubt you have.
I mean,
yeah, we all have.
well, here we are with rumination again.
But that's life. Yeah, that's
I'm
life.
going to be ruminating on that. for the next-
Reflection.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's life. It's so. Oh, here's okay. Another hard question. Okay, where is God in the progress at the granular level? Is God in the progress at the granular level? You're talking about the struggles of individuals in communities, and that's where reality is for most people. Especially rural people. But where's God in that?
He's ever present. I think there's an organization I'm following right now called what's it called? Lift Up the Vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where it's based, but it's an American-based organization. I've been following them predominantly because they work in Sudan, and they work in hard parts of the world. It's very difficult to work in hard parts of the world. That's not an organization.
And Sudan is hard.
So Sudan is hard. It's Africa for the hardcore.
Yeah.
Right? You gotta, and one of the things, and I'm very careful in this season now when I look at Christian organizations' websites. I look through it, the language they're using, who's involved, what are they doing? Are they creating dependency in my opinion, or are they really making individuals feel like they're a part of this entire part? Like I really do that more than I've ever done before. I don't give the benefit of the doubt.
Some organizations could hurt.
Oh yeah, When Helping Hurts. Have you read that book?
Oh no, I haven't.
Oh, When Helping Hurts. That speaks a lot to.
Okay.
I can't remember When Helping Hurts.
Noted.
Yeah, there's another book.
When Helping Hurts.
When Helping Hurts.
I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the book, but that's how when you give continuously, you create this dependency and then you create individuals who think now it's a right to do something. But anyway, this organization, it's a Christian organization working in Sudan and still keeping, and they're learning in the sense that those individuals who are believers still have a faith for a higher power. You know, I think there's an acknowledgement of a spiritual component that still exists around the world, the majority world. Unfortunately, that's being squashed and challenged here in the U.S. for many years. Right?
I'm optimistic.
For seeking votes?
No, well, the narrative, the
okay.
narrative itself is, you know, we were talking today about the death of rational materialism, or, you know, just made some nod to it, but we went through a testy time as a nation, or as a people, and the testy time was devout atheism, right? And I sort of feel like, or I'm optimistic that we are emerging from like militant atheism, and
about the new atheism, I think there's a neo-atheism in the sense
sure, right? You know, but okay.
I think the closest to agnostic, right? So I think what atheism, I don't know how we put
atheism is like one. There shouldn't be multiple categories of it. Atheism is supposed to be the disbelief in everything, like you believe in,
or in a higher power.
Sure, yeah.
But one argue that in order to disbelieve something, there has to be this perception that it exists.
That it was real,
it was there. Like you can't think of something that doesn't exist, right?
And I may be wrong, you know, it's like, but my conversations with people over time, non-evangelicals, right, is carries an acknowledgement or a growing acknowledgement for elements of reality that have direction that we cannot necessarily, like a God, you know, like a force of good within existence.
Yeah, and I think that's where the spiritual component starts, right? You have to, if you squash spiritual, then it makes it really difficult to go to the next level. Like, okay, if there's a spiritual, that something exists beyond ourselves, who is within us and a moving force, then you go to the thing, what is its name?
Yeah,
right? You get deeper. Like, it can't just be everything and anything. Then that includes everything. Then you narrow to what is its truth? What are then its parameters? What are then its, you know, for the Christian faith, we have God, you know, the Holy Spirit and Jesus Christ, so we call, and we call to submit to his authority through obedience, right? But you, in order to get somebody there, you got to, if that's a resurgence of what being spiritual truly means, right? That has been, I think, been a debate for many years where that's been challenged. But I can agree with you that the reality for individuals who have said there's no spiritual being is being changed, because what did C.S. Lewis say once, how he became a Christian? He said, I didn't become a Christian really necessarily by reading the Bible. I became a Christian by reading The Atheist. Because it made no sense to me. So even on a purely kind of philosophical level, if you give me these two things, Christianity and all of its weirdness that doesn't make it, offers me something in the end that responds more, and if I was a betting man, than what the atheist gives me, which is nothing at the end. Like, it doesn't respond to a human conditions that I think it was in that. Basically his argument in that position. So there is a starting point and it gets to some ending point.
Yeah. I find a hell of a lot more stability in people that are believers in spiritual versus atheists. Not really stable people for the most part.
Yeah.
So, food.
Food.
Sorry, I keep finding these.
He's just been wanting to talk about food for the last.
I know, that's all I wanted to talk about.
But okay, well, once again, the late great Anthony Bourdain once proclaimed that you want world peace, you want open-ended conversation, have a barbecue. Everybody loves food from all over the country, all
another
over the
black
world.
thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, another thing from Africa given to us that, you know, Texas brisket just didn't come from Texas brisket.
No, it did
came
not.
from somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about African food. I know your experience and what you told us, Savage, there's no silverware involved.
No.
Yeah.
We didn't have any anyway where we were, but we were pretty far out. I mean, when but what were you saying earlier about the whole breakfast, lunch, and dinner thing? That was because we had very little when we woke up.
Yeah.
And then we drove 2 hours out into the bush, and so we didn't eat lunch. But then when we came back, I don't. And that's when we had the bigger meal,
the main meal.
Yeah. But no, but I wanted to know is like, so what was your when you came over and to this day, what's the biggest difference you see in American or whatever that means food versus African food, and what do you like the best American food style food versus?
Well, I'll speak to the food itself, and then there's a lot of cultural components around food and why people get. I think, I mean, definitely being from Texas, you like what's it? Not pork chops. You just said it.
Brisket,
barbecue,
ribs.
Yeah, thank you, ribs.
Barbecue,
That's how my man. I need to get something to drink.
Help yourself.
We can
I think I grew up in Texas. I never knew how much I appreciate Texas until now. I mean, this state, I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm not moving from the state of Texas where I live in the U.S. But the way the culture wraps around food, and I love cornbread. Definitely love cornbread. I love mashed potatoes and gravy. I think one of the things that,
but some of that's derived from soul food, which is derived from
greens,
African heritage.
Yeah, a lot of that. In that, you really, of course, people like the processed foods. You like to go through the whole this natural.
Oh yeah,
it was cooked that day.
Yep.
I think that was one of the things living in Africa that I was actually a lot healthier because everything had to be made that day and made fresh.
Oh yeah.
And then preservation,
and then the spreading out of when we ate was helpful too, because your body will adapt.
Yeah.
When I first moved from the U.S. back to Africa, I was hungry all the time.
I'm hungry
because that body was used to this and that.
Yep.
But over time, my body would be longer. I could go to 9, and then I could go to 11, and then I could go to 2, and then sometimes I wouldn't eat till 6, but I'd still have the energy.
Right.
And you walk everywhere.
Oh yeah.
Right, we walk all the time.
Yeah.
Right, it's not an exercise thing. It's just a way of life. Right. And then you want to, especially in Chad, you just want to drink more water than anything. I was turning down Coke because I want water. It's hot out here.
It's hot.
I'm not drinking any Coke. Give me some water.
Yeah, that's speaking of hot, man, because that was what was crazy is because when we got over there, they told us make sure you bring long sleeves, and I was like, man, I'm from Texas. That's a different kind of hot, bro. It's a different kind of hot.
Just
Just like that hot sauce. That's a different kind of hot. Yeah, but,
and then you're dealing with bugs. You need that in the evening.
Yeah, there was bugs on our windows the size of that screen right there. Man. So that was a weird experience. But
back home, I love fish. I love fish.
Yeah,
I don't know a specific. I think we eat a lot of carp. If that's it, I'm not too particular on other. I just if it's fish, I'm eating it.
Interesting, because you're like the heart of Africa, right?
Yeah.
And you're isolated from all points of saltwater life. So what?
We have the river, the Shire River
carp
that
is
runs
everywhere.
through. That's everywhere. It runs through the capital. A lot. There's a river that runs through there. That's fished quite a bit.
Okay.
And what I loved about going down there is you'll have. And this happens a lot in Senegal. They do a lot of fishing because they live on the coast. Is you'll have a family unit where the father's out catching the fish. You make the order. The wife yells what you want. They'll bring it in. The daughter's craving it, and then they're cooking it and serving to you right there. You see the whole process.
Oh yeah.
And we don't cut off the head.
Yeah.
This thing annoys me to no end with some individuals.
Yeah.
But it is what it is, right? Fish have heads.
Yeah.
And some people don't want to eat it.
Yeah.
And some people do. I remember I had a American friend who came and they served fish, and she turned away and said, "Reuben, I have to admit that she was honest. Reuben, will you cut off his head?" And she didn't turn. And so I cut off the head and took it out before she looked down and ate it.
Yeah. Well, the Mexican community, they eat the whole fish like that.
They eat the whole fish. Yeah.
The Asians do. Yeah.
There's this majority is that's
me and Doc has the eyeball meat underneath of a eyeball of a fish.
Yeah.
So,
It's great.
I have never eaten an eyeball. That seems like
we didn't eat the eyeball. There's like a chunk of meat underneath the eyeball and a little sliver of the
That seems like the most
head meat.
taboo thing to me of anything you can eat is the eyeball of another creature.
Well,
I'll eat all the other parts.
It was his brother telling us how great it was, so we both were like, "Is he just trying to pull it over on
We
us?"
did. I still don't know.
The same with the goat, the head of a goat. We cook it over time to make sup, and then the eyeballs and all the
I love goat meat. That's what I was raised on. So
my philosophy is to try, food wise, try everything once. The eyeball is just weird.
It's just not in your wheelhouse.
I don't know, but I'll eat the testicles off of a calf.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think we should do
that.
it. We should just go have some eyeballs somewhere.
Where in Texas do you find eyeball?
I don't know.
Oh, I bet there's place.
Okay, so
Mexican meat market.
how is fish cooked for Africans? Is it fried? Is it grilled? I mean,
Stewed.
It's both, all three.
everything?
All three,
Okay.
depending on what that person's interest is.
Do you like catfish here in Texas?
Yeah, I like catfish.
My
I like-
stepdad was a Salish Indian from Montana. He would not
Okay.
eat catfish because they're ugly.
That's it.
I don't give a shit. They taste good.
All right.
They taste good.
When you hungry out in the
Yeah.
desert somewhere,
Yeah,
you'll
exactly.
change your mind on that.
Oh yeah.
I don't think I've ever had carp though.
I know.
I don't think I've ever had it. I might have to try it.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I just like fish in general.
Right.
Yeah, I like fish more than meat actually.
Yeah. See, we
You
didn't
know,
have any
so-
while I was down there.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
So where do we go to get a taste of Africa?
Oh,
That's tough.
I think no. We have a lot of the African think tank vendors have restaurants.
Uh-huh.
You know, I can send those cards. I can't remember their names, but they'll bring their traditional food. There's a guy from Nigeria who does the meat from Nigeria.
Oh yeah.
The name is blanking on me. I'm getting to my end here.
We'll have
but
to look it up.
Well,
Yeah, I
there's,
know.
there's a South African place, which I don't know if that's same area, but
Is that in Roanoke?
in Roanoke.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Roanoke,
that's right.
okay.
That's right.
I never heard of it. I have to go check that out.
Yeah, they
closest
just,
thing-
I think they just opened another location and didn't.
Closest thing I've had, well, it's not even African. It's Jamaican Gates.
Oh.
Yeah, that was a really good place.
Yeah,
But-
the jerk chicken and everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
Jamaican food is good.
Yeah.
It's
It's-
solid.
There's an Ethiopian
good.
place, I think.
Okay, I just saw you post some Ethiopian.
Yeah, there's a
coffee
place
places.
in Dallas.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm saying Ethiopia Cafe. I think it is. I love their coffee. But they serve, I don't know if they serve fish, but they serve a lot of meat.
Okay.
And then their injera, which is the type of bread that they usually eat on a regular basis. I just love the atmosphere when I was there. It felt like I was back home.
Yeah.
You know, you guys coming in, you could hear their tea. They weren't even eating. They're just drinking the tea all day
Yeah.
and getting together,
Well,
pulling
yeah.
each other's chairs around, saying hi to one another. They don't even know each other. I don't need to know you.
Yeah.
I know you now.
that's
and I'll
cool.
go join us. You know,
right.
I recently posted. It's funny to see the different cultural things. So the guy that I posted recently about him eating with his friend, they ordered the food, and his friend took off, and the food came, and literally as I'm watching him, he's looking at this thing, and I know what's running in his mind. He's like, I can't eat by myself. That I could tell his nature because I have a friend from Nigeria. He came one time and I was working in the front and I had some stuff to do and I gave him some food and I said, T, eat. He's like, man, Reuben, I can't eat by myself. There's just something in our culture, like we got to have somebody. So that guy looked around and he saw me and he's like, join me. So I sat with him and we enjoyed a meal. So
So it's got to be
That's
a
like
social thing.
It's got a social thing,
Yeah.
right? You know, it takes time.
But even at that restaurant, there were no utensils, right?
There was no utensils.
You were eating with your
You're
hands.
eating with
Okay.
your hands. And if you ask for a fork, they'll give it to you.
Right.
But like I said, who wants to be the Westerner in the room?
Right, exactly.
We wear hands here. You know, look at that.
So
would
is
see-
there not a place where you can get the pounded yam, like at a restaurant anywhere?
You can. There's actually a Nigerian place I ate out in.
And what is the
Louisville.
actual what's the term for it? The name of it?
Fufu.
Fufu. That's
Yeah,
right.
fufu.
Yeah, yeah.
So that is the staple food for Africa.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
fufu, but it's fufu in Nigeria.
Right. Oh, okay.
In Chad, in my tribal language, we call it muru.
Okay.
It was called laboul. So every community has a name for this dish where it's pounded, whether it's yam, millet, rice, with concept, with a bowl of some type of sauce that you're breaking off and dipping,
Dipping. Yeah.
right? I think in Zimbabwe it's sazda. In Zambia it's nshima.
Okay.
So they love nshima. They say I could feed them chicken from a local restaurant. They would finish and then go in the kitchen and cook nshima. You haven't eaten unless you've eaten nshima.
Yeah.
So the whole concept is it's made and the sauce is usually cabbage because there's a
Right.
lot more vegetables there. You know, I forgot what they use, but they do it and you take it and you dip it. That whole concept is throughout Africa and it's called different names.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's exactly how we did it. Yep.
Yeah, and it's inexpensive. Usually, it can feed. It's nutritious. I mean, it's to
Meat
save
is
the hunger.
expensive.
Yeah, the meat is expensive. In some parts, like I think in Zambia, they do a lot more vegetables and tomatoes and stuff because the meat is expensive. In Congo, they have a lot of meat, so they eat it all the time. In Chad, we have meat. We have a lot of camels. I love camel meat.
Oh, yeah.
Wow,
Very tender.
That's interesting.
Very tender because you have the nomads who'll move it maybe from Sudan through Chad into Nigeria, and I've
I
been
wonder
to a
if camel
slaughterhouse.
tastes like horse.
I've never had horse.
Yeah.
That's one thing.
Neither have I.
I just watched a Bourdain episode of No Reservations where they were eating camel in Egypt.
Oh, in Egypt, yeah.
And he didn't really say it. They showed the shot of everybody. They're sitting in their tents made of all the ornate rugs. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wasn't that? It looks like a horse that's on this table, and it's cooked whole. Yeah. It's roasted whole.
It's roasted whole.
And they just come up and he finally says, "No, this is camel." And I've never thought, but they're a split hoofed animal, right?
Yeah,
yeah,
a camel.
Yeah.
Never had it.
Camel.
He, I think he said it tastes like chicken to him.
It tastes like chicken.
That's what he said.
I like chicken. I think it
just depends on seasoning.
Yeah,
right?
it was just I love the tenderness of it. I mean, it didn't feel like you were chewing endlessly before it broke apart and you could swallow it. I love some of the fat on it, and then if you put it in a sandwich, like kind of saute into small little pieces and put in a sandwich, that was really good. What else do we eat in Chad that? We eat grasshoppers,
okay,
like locusts, yeah.
So that's which we have an abundance of here.
Yeah, so they'll fly in the trees. You catch them, put them in water, get off the wings, and then they'll fry that up. I love it. Now that can taste a little bit like chicken.
Yeah,
that's what I've heard.
Yeah,
really,
a little bit like chicken.
I've only eaten raw grasshopper. And it tasted like burnt toast.
Yeah, we can feed a lot of hungry people with the amount of grasshoppers.
Oh, no doubt.
Through
yeah,
here.
We got tons of them.
That's another thing we should try.
Feeding or eating grasshoppers,
like cooked.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. I don't want to eat one raw.
Yeah,
they be
fry. So you put it in water and you just
just to get the to keep it from flying off and the wings get heavy, and then you eventually take off the wings and then they'll cook it in some oil and fry it.
Yeah.
Oh, so you just like cast iron skillet with butter, and then boom.
Exactly,
dude.
I mean, I ate frog legs. So what's a grasshopper?
Yeah, let's do it.
Frog legs are pretty good.
They are.
They are kind of slimy.
You ever had frog legs?
I don't believe I have.
So do you fry it till it's crunchy?
I like it crunchy.
The grasshopper?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would like it crunchy too.
And the whole point of frying is getting it crunchy, right?
Yeah.
You don't want soggy
I wonder if you
fried.
could air fry it and it'd be even better.
Yeah.
Only one way to find out.
Maybe.
Okay,
we're air frying some grasshoppers.
We're getting into grasshopper season in a few months.
Yeah, they'll be here soon.
We might have found something that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Or we might have found something that's absolutely horrible. I don't know.
You don't know until you try it, right?
That's
Right.
All right. So much earlier in the podcast, we talked about by age 4, you had lived through one coup. And you got 3 more to go.
On down this path.
You got 3 more that you've lived through in your lifetime so far.
Yeah. So for those, coup d'etat, government overthrow out of the 79 was those rebel groups. Then in 1990, so like I said, my parents moved our family back in 89. My dad came back in 1990 in September to get me and my brother. And then we moved back in September. In December of that same year, the coup happened. So the president at the time, Hissène Habré, who'd been the president through the 80s, was overthrown by Idriss Déby.
Okay.
So he overthrew him in December of 1990.
And your age, what is your age at 12
I'm
or
12.
13? Okay. What in the hell do you do during a coup at that age? Just
You stay off the streets.
Yeah.
Okay.
You, fortunately, I do remember this. Fortunately is, so my dad had us in the house. He was working with some of his pastors and people working to hide the cars and move them from certain areas and put them in certain, because, if fighting goes down, people will take the cars, the rebels or the government troops will take it to use it. I remember watching the television, and the French troops had met Idriss Déby's troops at the entrance into the capital, N'Djamena. So by this time, Hissène Habré had gone, so there was actually a full day without any official government.
okay.
And in a way, when we look back at that was really good, is because they could have easily been fighting. Had Hissène Habré stood his ground and said, "We're not leaving, we're fighting with troops," then you would get caught. The general population gets caught in the middle of this again, right? And the forces that tend to come in can be brutal too. So when Hissène Habré had left and there was no government, I think the idea with the French troops is like, guys, go in, take power, leave the population alone. Because they could go in into certain communities and pull people out, and do a number of vicious things and looking for the detractors or individuals and do a whole bunch of stuff. But I think the conversation at the time, remember, like, it was good that the French troops met them so that they could say, hey, the president's not here. Go in quietly and just take over.
Yeah.
And leave everybody alone.
So that wasn't a traumatic.
It wasn't a traumatic
coup. One.
It could have been.
I guess
it could have been worse.
That's a contrast to broach here now, because we're ingrained here in this country with our Second Amendment, and thankfully we don't really have to use it for the most part. But you want to be able to defend yourself. What's that look like in Chad? Something like that exists.
We don't have that.
Yeah.
You can't. It's only the government can have guns.
So if people show up with guns, you're more or less defenseless.
Yeah, that's why you believe in God a lot. At the granular level, every day of our lives, right?
Yeah.
It's not. I don't think it's any contradiction. I think that the U.S. is unique in its historical context that has established that early on. So that comparison is really difficult to make because there was really no historical context for other countries.
Sure, yeah.
In that respect. So that was 1990. It was really interesting because like I said, it's going from a stability to like, what is going on here? How is this a government overthrow and all of that stuff? Then I came back to the States, like I said, 94. I moved back to Chad in 2001. So I'd finished up high school, moved to Seattle, Washington, did a year and a half of community college there with my brother, transferred to the University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire. I graduated there in 2000, moved to Iowa for about a year. I'd been going to Iowa over the summer, so I knew a lot of people there. Then I moved back to Texas, actually down to the Davy Crockett National Park area.
Love that place.
Near Houston.
Yeah.
I was actually working with an organization that's no longer in existence.
Kind of Conroe.
Is it right
area above Houston.
Okay.
Yeah. It's great.
So it's
place.
beautiful. Like, we're out in the middle of nowhere working with these juvenile delinquent kids who've gone through the system, and this was like getting in trouble in school, and this was their last stop before they would go into the prison system.
Okay.
Gotcha.
And so we were out in the middle of nowhere taking spigots, like cold water. We didn't even have like cabins. We had like this flat wooden floor with tarp. Halfway up and then tarp down, so it was open with sleeping bags. We had outhouses, like we had to dig our own holes and put the outhouses. Like that's where I was living. The idea is taking them out of the city, putting them out there, getting them through that program, and if they were successful, then they could return home. And some parents would do that. The problem is you're turning them back to the community that got them in there in the first place. So they're going back to that unless you can change that environment. I saw a kid taken out in handcuffs. Like when they came and got him, they had handcuffed him and escorted him to his next life. So
it's like good direction, but you're right, until you address the community aspect of what formed that child.
Yes.
Yeah.
What
Which goes back to the whole like village.
Yeah.
Saying.
I mean, we would have these things called circle ups. It's a good concept. Like you walking with the kids, about 10, 13 of them, you're about 2 counselors, and any person could call circle up if there was a fight. Rather than fighting, circle up.
Yeah.
So we'd circle up and have a discussion until we figure this out. We'd walk. I was so frustrated. We'd walk, circle up, and then we'd get to like the bathroom is literally 50 feet. We're doing 20 circle ups because once we deal with an issue, the minute we get back, you yell at him and you call him circle up.
Oh man,
guys, I'm about to punish all of y'all so we can get to the restrooms here.
That's awesome.
Quit calling circle up. Let's get it done and let's move on.
Yeah.
But I like the circle up concept because it was a good way to address issues without fighting with each other.
Sure.
Yeah.
I gave them an opportunity, and then we would handle that issue. I think it was a really good program, but I think it really prepared me for going back to Chad because of the conditions. Like I said, we're outhouse. We had no electricity. We were using lamps.
So even personally, you learned skills.
Yeah, those skills that prepared me because a year later I was back in Chad because of immigration issues. So at that time, and that's another whole subject, at that time, immigration law says I'm an F1 student, so that's a F1 visas for students. I went from that to H1B, which I'd filed with the organization. And I think I got it.
Okay.
I received it. So then I could stay in the States as an H1B. And then from the H1B, you can go to a green card. Well, in the H1B process, I got it, and then the organization shut down Because what was so crazy is the funding for the organization, I think it was Hope something, had been in the Texas budget automatically for 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
That year, they cut the program. So it put me in a dilemma because my staying in the U.S. was dependent that I'm attached to an organization.
Yeah.
So I had to quickly scramble. And I got a lawyer, said, do I get an H-1B? I have to find another organization that's willing to take an H-1B. And if you know anything about H-1B visa, it's very difficult because it's really, I don't even know how I got it because I was doing social work.
Okay.
H-1B is really for specific talent in a way, in a field that a lot of either Westerners don't do or that's really needed for the U.S., like engineering.
Yeah.
You know, some idea or, you know, you're talking
And it's
about
got
some
corporate sponsorship.
It's expensive
Yeah.
to do that. So I actually paid my H-1B process. So I could get an F1 and go back to school, but I just graduated. I'm like, what am I going to go back to school for?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going to stay under the radar. That's one thing my dad's like, I wasn't going to do. I was like, you're not doing that. You're not going to go.
So you can stay here illegally.
Illegally, yeah, basically. Yeah. And I was like, I'm not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I looked for this, and then it finally came down to a situation where nothing was working. So I booked a flight back to Chad. And my life changed for the next 10 years because the whole idea was I was going to stay in Chad for a year, request another visa, and then come back and do that. I ended up staying 10 years.
Wow.
And I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
Okay.
It changed my perspective on Africa so much.
What time frame was this?
This was from, so I was 21 or 22 when I went back to 32. So it was from 2001 to 2011.
Okay.
I was in Chad.
So recently,
Yeah.
then in the grand scale.
Yep.
Okay.
And I think, and that's where there was a coup in 2006. Attempted coup, because this one you had a rebel faction in, she had that map. So you had a group in Sudan who made a mad dash for the city, for N'Djamena. And it was in the morning. This is what's crazy. It was
I want to pass on
4 a.m. We wake up, we can hear bombs in the distance.
Holy cow.
Like boom.
Yeah.
Boom. I think the night before we were told that there's some group approaching. 5 a.m. Boom. I call my brother. I'm like, man, the noise is slowly approaching. 6. Boom. 7, 8, 9. It's louder.
Oh boy.
Till they break into the city. And as I understand, if I can recall correctly, it wasn't even really a Chadian faction of rebels, because you'll have rebels who are Chadian who are just taking refuge in another part of Sudan and then gearing up to overthrow the president. But as I understood it, maybe some Sudanese rebel groups who were trying to come in and do something in the city.
Okay.
They got there around like 10 o'clock, 11. As I said, they didn't know where they were going.
Yeah.
They were easily squashed by 12 or 1 o'clock p.m. I kid you not, the taxis were up and running to the market. So that entire morning, everyone's hunkered down, listening to this advance of gunfire and bombs.
Yeah.
And by like 1 o'clock, people are heading to the market.
Back to normal.
The newspapers
To
are
buy
printing
stuff.
like, hey, you might have noticed there was
Hey, life's got to go on.
Yeah.
I was like, are you kidding me right now, right? I just like 4 or 5 hours, we've been trying to figure out what our next steps are. And it was a crazy thing. And then the one in 2008 was much bigger.
Okay.
And this is where you talk about, I would say, for me personally, God's sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was 2008. So in December of 2007, I'm working for EPSI, ExxonMobil's affiliate.
Mm-hmm.
My boss asked me to stay in December, so I did. I postponed my vacation because I was going to go to Nigeria. January rolls around. She's like, I need you to stay again. I said, no, I stayed in December. I'm leaving. So I leave. And I think I leave in last week of January on a Friday. I get in Nigeria. I'm listening to the BBC. At that time, the BBC was good. The BBC's a little fishy now.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, they just told a lot of news as it was. And they're like, the rebels in Sudan are heading to N'Djamena, the capital of Chad. So a group of rebels decided to hop on their trucks and just gun it for the capital. Right? I don't know the exact distance, but it's going to take an entire day or so to go across. And you can't miss Toyota Land Cruisers in the desert. Like how can you miss that? Like just gunning towards a direction. And so what's crazy about it, and this is where the United States Embassy also dropped the ball on this is, so Monday I'm heading to Abuja. I think I'm close to, I'm in Jos, maybe heading to Abuja. Mm-hmm. I'm still listening to the BBC and they're coming, they're getting closer. I thought it'd be squashed because throughout the year you'd have these skirmishes that come and then they'd head back, they're coming. But this one, they were still coming. And by Wednesday, I'm like, they're still talking about this. I get on my phone. I have a sat phone that the company had given me. I call my admin assistant. I'm like, come forward. What's going on? I said, we're at home until further notice. So they had sent everybody home that Thursday and say, stay home until we let you know things because the rebels are still approaching.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, I'm with my uncle and my cousin. Like, we got to turn around. Like, this is serious. So we do a U-turn and head back. So we're in Abuja or Jos, and we're heading back towards Chad now. It's very funny when you're going this way and you got the cars going the other direction. But I was like, I got to go see what's going on. I got cousins. I'm responsible for people. And by Thursday, that Sunday evening up into Thursday, the rebels were 75 kilometers. I don't know, maybe some miles from the capital,
which is a long way in Africa, right?
No, it can be. But I think we have a good portion of that road paved where they were on. So anyway, they made it to the capital, and this will go to why you have to have the radio station as one of the main things. It's because the government was saying, no, we got it squashed when there's no issue. So people are listening to this and no one's moving. Until Thursday, the rebels actually break into the city. And there's some skirmishes, right? And people don't leave, right? So when I talked to some of my Chadron friends later, like they were laying in their houses on their stomach because there was some fighting going on. I think by Friday, there'd been some lull in the fighting as the president was reinforcing his position in front of the presidential palace, right? Because I think the city, he was slowly losing that. For me, I got back to Kusuri. So Kusuri is the sister city in Cameroon of Jemena. So it's like a river. You can literally see across. And I get there either Saturday morning, I think. And I walk up on the riverbank and I'm thinking to myself, just last week I was in the city at a meeting with HR.
Right.
Our HR meeting. 6 days later, I can't even get into, and I could hear the gunfire. You could hear the smoke.
Yeah.
And then what I was told later, and then Saturday, and Sunday evening into Monday, a lot of Chadrons had already been evacuating because there was still some fighting. The president hadn't left. The rebels were still surrounding the city. There were more troops coming. And so that Sunday into Monday, people were I could hear it all night. People were coming across the river because what was happening in the city that I was told later is that the rebels who had taken the majority of the city but hadn't taken the presidential palace were going door to door and telling people, get out. Because come Monday morning, we're going to do our final assault on the president at the Capitol. I mean, at the presidential palace.
Right.
So they were giving that lull to get so I was at this pastor's house that my dad had worked with, and when I first gotten there, there might have been maybe 100 people. By that next morning, it was like 2,000 people. It had to be. I mean, it was a good throughout the city in his compound or whatever. And basically, I was a refugee. So come Monday morning, nothing happened. So I don't know all the ins. I can't remember all the ins and outs, but the rebel groups pulled away. The president, I think somebody had said that there was the French military that had come in and said, hey, we'll fly you out because they thought it was over, that a new regime, people in the city. I remember that people were in the city like, oh, he's overthrown. But it wasn't the case. He still had the presidential palace, you know? And so once they pulled away, literally the next 2 days, I'm sitting in Cameroon. You can't get into Jemena yet, right? Because there's still his troops. Once they pulled out, his troops are there. I see rows and rows of military equipment coming into Chad. Tanks after tank after things, such as rolling in. So I don't know how quickly somebody moved or helped him move, but the president was reinforcing his position for at that time where all the rebels have moved out in case there was another attack.
Interesting.
Because basically the rebels had the city. They just didn't have the presidential palace.
Right.
So there's really 4 components to a coup.
To a successful coup.
To a success. It doesn't mean to help in a successful coup. And I'm not advocating for coups. Let me make that, it's just an observation that you see happen that are really kind of, there's more to coups than that. There's got to be outside government support.
Right.
Oh, sure.
Because we know very clearly that the French are very prominent in who's president in Chad.
Yeah.
Or in other parts. That's why you're having issues in Mali and Burkina Faso with the new rebel leaders who don't like the French, who took over the coup leaders. Mm-hmm. They're kicking out a lot of because they know all of the history and like, you guys do this and da-da-da-da. So they're being more bold in that. It's one, you have to take the airport. Airports are important. Mm-hmm. It flies in and out of stuff, right? Yeah. You have additional troops coming in, additional weapons coming in, whatever. You got to control that.
It's like, that's the ability of the government to reinforce.
Yeah. And sometimes foreign governments reinforce that because it's also important to them for certain things. So I'm speaking from just assessment that, if the French kind of control the airport in Chad because they have a big base there too. They can determine things too, right? Secondly, you got to take any of the roads in and out of the city. In most African countries, not like Dallas, like I was saying earlier, there's so many ways you can get into Dallas.
Not in
you can never
not
down
in Dallas. You can come from the north on the main road, maybe you can come from the south on the main road, some other things, but there's not like multiple paved roads that you can move a bunch of equipment through.
Otherwise, you're not moving big equipment.
You're not moving bigger. You're just moving troops, right? Yeah. Across, and that's even difficult. So if you own that, I remember they dug a big. Once things had calmed down, the president had something, or the government had dug a big ditch around the city, in case if you're going to move troops off, not on the road, and try to move them on the unpaved road, you'll have these ditches that
you've got to get through.
You got to get through. So. That's it.
They made a dry moat. And
exactly. Exactly. So you have the main roads. You have to take the radio station. You have to take forms of communication.
Stop the communication.
Yeah. So they were cutting down. They were stopping cell phone communication.
Yeah.
Because the rebels can call one another. So you have sat phones.
Right.
But you take the radio station because what the radio station was saying to the population, no, we got this under control. The government was saying that.
Okay.
But they didn't have it under control. The rebels were coming, and they got to the city. But nobody moved because they were listening to the radio that the government has it under control until they realized, I got bullets. I'm hearing bullets outside my door.
Right outside the door.
You don't have it under control.
That's probably not the situation just in Africa either. It's like here in America, Europe, everywhere, it's always going to be government saying the situation's fine. It's all under control. It's always going to be that propaganda. So it's not just.
And if you read the articles, I'm not speaking out of turn. If you read the articles, there was people trying to flee in the middle of the fighting. People got hurt. The Red Cross was there because they didn't have enough time to go. By Thursday, the fighting was happening. Maybe Friday died down. People were taking advantage to now flee the next few days. And the last thing, more psychological, you got to take the presidential palace. Like you literally have the city.
Yeah.
But you have this presidential palace that you haven't taken because the president's in there.
It's the last stand.
It's the last stand.
Yeah.
And he literally had put out tanks, and his last troops like, I will fight you until the last man in the city.
We call that the Alamo.
The Alamo, yeah.
That didn't end well for us.
We were, and that's like, but you have this, you can't wait him out. He'll wait you out too. And so but I think through other negotiations, again, I'm not privy to those things. I don't breathe that air. The rebel groups pulled away and pulled out, which was, I think for us as regular citizens, a godsend because it got pretty ugly.
Yeah.
Really ugly for things that we can't control.
Right.
Like taking all this in from you, it sounds like these things happen quick.
They can happen very quick.
Yeah.
Because this is what happened. The U.S. Embassy, Thursday, they didn't even figure out, like, you have all this technology. You can see troops. Why haven't your people been evacuated yet?
Yeah.
So by that Thursday morning, is when they started evacuating people. Or that Wednesday night, they were going around finding some foreign nationals. And because the reason I know that is because when I got back from Chad, from Nigeria, and I was in Chad, in Cameroon, a friend of mine saw me walking and said, Reuben, you need to go to this Hotel Relais. And that's where we're all meeting, the ones who've evacuated. So I went there, and somehow I got a hold of my boss, and she was in Cameroon, but in Douala, so that's on the port. And they were going to fly her out of Africa somewhere else. And she said, Reuben, do whatever you guys need to do, and we'll support you. Right? And so, and she had just left, I think, that Wednesday. You know, so there's two incidents I want to make a quick point before I forget about some privilege of carrying a U.S. passport. So I was a principal of a school after this coup, and there was some was it? No, I had already. Did I leave in 2008? So anyway, the thing is, there are a number of U.S. troops or the Marines in the U.S. Embassy. Not a lot.
Yeah.
At the time, I think I heard there were like maybe 4 to 10. Most of the U.S. Marines are in neighboring Cameroon. Chad's a small country that doesn't need a lot of that right now. So at that time. So the U.S. government has an agreement with the French government, who's predominantly there. There are a lot of troops that when things happen, they'll go door to door and pick up all the foreign nationals. That's why when you go to a country, you need to register that you're there.
Gotcha.
So they know you're in country.
So that's for your own safety.
For your own safety.
Yeah.
So that if something goes down, they're like, oh, this person's here, they're staying here, we need to go get them. If they don't know you're there, they're not coming to look for you.
Call the U.S. Embassy, let them know.
Let them know, or let them know as you enter or go in there. That's why they tell Americans that. Because if they're able to, they'll come and grab you, right? And so what was heartbreaking one time is you had this mother who had 5 kids, I think, and this was some civil unrest that was happening later, that her youngest child was an American citizen. Her 4 oldest were not. So they come to the house, and she's like, "Can you?" They say, "We only here for him."
Wow.
The others, you're not U.S. citizens.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
That's we. There's nothing we can do. We're here for him.
Yeah.
It's cold hard policy.
That's a policy.
Yeah.
So the mom is like, "Well, I'm not gonna leave my other kids," so they took him, and I think that family in Utah or something. And that was it. Like you run into those incidents in real life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's
Things
something
that we don't think about.
they don't think. Like I've been a citizen, I think, since 2016. Like I've never, so I understand the value of not having a United States passport over the situation and the value of having it.
Yep.
Right. In some countries, it may be difficult, but I know what it brings the advantages. Like when I go through Paris now, I hated going through Paris. I'll say this. Mes amis qui parlent le français, je veux te dire quelque chose pour que vous écoutez. J'aime beaucoup la France, mais c'était difficile à traverser la France quand j'étais Tchadien. So I'm just saying in French that when I had a Tchadian passport, it was difficult for me to fly through France. Because sometimes of the way I was treated and the lack of respect, because I was very American in my, people could tell.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I'm carrying a Tchadian passport, and there was not a lot of respect. I made that same trip when I became a U.S. citizen, night and day.
Totally
Just
changed.
a whole different treatment.
No, night and day treatment. Even my brother, who traveled more than me, he's like, once I got that U.S. passport, the way they would be, go. But Chad and Portia, they're interrogating me. I did something. So so I just say, as much as maybe the U.S. is looked upon around the world and hated in some places, sometimes, it's really, I would say, honestly, it's difficult to show a United States passport.
Sure.
But for me, I have that because I understand the history, and I'm very proud to be an American citizen. I understand that this was a lot of work. I just didn't do it to do it. So I could have just stayed a Chadian citizen. But I can utilize the good things from that passport to carry out certain things that I want around the world, right? So that's just a hard, kind of hard truth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But that's
right?
nice
Being
and
a
reassuring
citizen.
to hear that sentiment from you too.
Yeah.
That we're not completely broken here.
No, I don't think we
There's
are.
still some
I
good
really don't think
attributes
we are.
Yeah.
It's like the opportunity to move forward and progress as a democratic system that really does good for the world, right? And not that it's not been taken over by cronies. Obviously,
It has.
large elements have, but we've, there's a lot of opportunity as well. It's like remembering or trying to keep in mind that immigrant kind of perspective and
Yeah, equal opportunity, not equal.
and not ruminate
Yeah.
on the American experience, not ruminate on the negativities of all the shit that we're battling or up against. It's like there's some real hope and progress that we should be talking about as people.
And that criticism actually America's superpower. I wrote about this once. The criticism of America is actually a superpower.
Yes.
Because as least things get out, things are talked about, they're challenged, they're changed, they're relooked
Yes,
at, they're
most
reassessed.
certainly.
This continuous thing of something that you're a more perfect union allows that. That's a superpower, right? To be able to do that.
Wow. Yeah.
In a country that you're not able to do that, you're stagnant, you're going backwards, there's no hope for your future generation. Like I said, immigrants come to America. I'm not speaking for all of them. I know my experience.
Sure.
But then I know experiences. They come because there's something here.
Right.
They're not coming just simply to
Right.
think. And then the idea also is that you can incorporate into being an American. I'm sorry, y'all could come to Chad, live 20 years, become a Chad. You will not be considered Chadian.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that doesn't happen.
Just not
That's
You're
a
not
valuable-
family, is not connected.
yeah,
You're not going to be considered Chadian.
Yeah.
valuable observation.
And I say this, and I want to make sure so people who are listening are clear. I have a friend, Samuel. His name is Sam. His mom is Chadian. His dad is Nigerian. Sam was born in Chad, has a Chadian passport, has Chadian citizenship, and he grew up in Nigeria, but came back on his own volition and wanted to get incorporated in Chadian life, and it was difficult for him. And then eventually we worked together in an English program. Then when I was hired as the training coordinator for EPSI, ExxonMobil thing, I hired him. And some of the challenges he had because his last name was not Chadian.
Wow.
They had on paper, born here, whatever. But because his name was not Chadian, he went through a lot of difficulty in trying to incorporate and seek advantages. That's a fact. I think sometimes we have to assess as Africans some of the things we do if we're going to really try to incorporate others there. I mean, I think there's a validity, in my opinion, to what our culture offers and what your ethnicity is. But if you're going to be truly global and invite other people in, there's got to be some give in some areas. Right. So
Can't necessarily care what their last name is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is he contributing to the country? Is he providing necessary benefits here?
But at the same time, you don't
people?
want to dilute like your cultural offerings and traditions either.
Yeah. And I don't think you have to do that at the expense of being with other cultures.
Sure.
Yeah.
You just have to find a way to find the connectivity and to hold steadfast. And sometimes you have to hold both.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It can't be one or the other. You just got to be like, okay, this is what we do here and this is what we do there and that's what we do. Right? Right.
America's, I guess, really always unless you discount the Native Americans, we kind of fucked that up for them. But
we did. Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Since then, it's always just kind of
obviously we did.
I don't know who this we you're speaking of. But
We is French.
Oui. But yeah, I don't think I would go to Chad and think I'm going to be a Chadian. I wouldn't have that expectation.
Yeah.
America or the United States is that beacon, though. It's like you can come here, you can contribute, you have opportunity. Be an American.
Yeah.
We don't give a shit where you're from, what you look like. It's the way it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
But I also would not go to Chad, move there, and bitch about the way the country ran.
The way they're doing things, yeah.
Because that was my choice to go there. So that's some of the biggest crap that pisses me. No,
Do they?
I don't know about Chad, but here,
no,
here,
I meant
yes,
immigrants.
and that's the thing
Okay.
is when you do come to America, you chose to come here, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. Now, I'm not saying let's not sit around like what we're doing and try to make it better. But the people that just come and just want to grop about it with no wanting to sit down and what can we do to make it better? It's just I want to grop, I want to complain, It's,
Or they have their hand out.
yes,
Yeah.
That's what gripes me because I wouldn't ever go to another country and move there and then do nothing but crap and complain about it.
Yeah. So what? Okay. More a question for the bros, right? But what's been y'all's experience with immigrants? You know, like we have experience with immigrants, mostly from Mexico.
Right now,
but that's generally where my experience stops.
well, so you say that, but technically, you have way more experience with immigrants than that.
Yeah, it's true.
Because how old are you?
Yeah, old.
44.
Yeah.
So you have you
44.
Technically you have 44 years of experience.
Yeah, because American.
We're all freaking immigrants.
I went to med school. I was in science, so a lot of Asian immigrants through that.
I mean, our
Indian
experience with immigrants here would be, I guess, through service industries. That's where you mostly run into them in some way or another.
Yeah, I got you.
So yeah,
I don't know.
I can't name any inside this community. I don't know. That's a tough question.
Yeah. I got a tougher question.
Okay.
So how has it sounds like, when I listen to your story and I try to think of like the more thematic elements, that there has been like a thematic element of God guiding you by shutting doors. It's like, is that true? Do you feel that that's true?
Yeah. I think.
It's like, what is that? Like God guiding you by shutting doors?
Yeah, I think he opens them and closes them.
Yeah. I think as I look back, and that's a really good question, dog. I think when I look at some of the things that has happened living in the environment in Chad's, like that's only a God thing.
Yeah.
It's, even with my little things like, little thing like the immigration issue that forced me to go back to Chad.
Yeah.
My intent was not to go, but he shut the door on that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And your intent was to come back.
And my intent was to come back. I did 10 years. And I think that in that 10 years, what it did, it allowed me to see Chad and Africa in a completely different light. Because prior to that, I remember when I was 16, and I remember being on the truck heading to the airport. And I remember thinking to myself, because I was there from 12 to 16, I said, I'm never coming back here. I remember thinking that. I'm not coming back to Chad. don't want anything to do with Africa. Now, people would see me like, that's a completely different concept you have now.
Yeah.
Right? And God shut those doors and I moved back. And after the first 2 years were difficult. Even the first 2 years coming back to the US, the first 2 years in those transitions back and forth.
Period.
Because I've been around 46 years, half in Africa, half here. But it wasn't like long, it was like stint, gone. Stint, come back. Stint, come. And so so it creates a confusion that now I'm at an age that I'm trying to really manage having that privilege and opportunity to be, culturally in depth.
Yeah.
But it has come at some expense as well.
So how old are you now?
I'm 46.
So the longest period of your life was spent in Chad? You said,
was it in Chad? So no, now in the U.S. So I've been in Chad was 2001 to 2011.
Okay.
And then now here, 2011 to 24.
Okay.
But I had a stint in Zambia between then. So from 2020 to 2021, we're in Zambia.
Okay.
And then came back.
Okay.
So,
have any of your plans panned out?
What's that quote? You want to make God laugh? Tell him your plan.
Yeah, right.
Man, he cracking up on me, man. He's like, bro, this is funny. He's like, check this out, man. He told me this.
That's right.
Yeah,
we all know that feeling, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's God's sovereignty. How do you live in God's sovereignty? Is really interesting. God's sovereignty is both what He does and what He chooses not to do. Right. He can. Something going the course of life, and then He can put His hand in, or He can see it and say, just let it continue. But it's all within His sovereignty. Right. Sovereignty is an issue of that because you're not comparing anything else but the Lord. I was always curious, I like how you guys talk about language and learning new words, like and concepts. So, someone used to say to me, God is two things. I had a seminary paper, and the question was, is God genocidal?
What?
What's
that was the paper you had to write. Is God genocidal? You had to write a paper on that. Because of what He told the Israelites to go do and go into the land of milk and honey and take everybody out.
Yep.
Kill them all. right? And I said, I wrote the paper, or I made the question, I said, the question is wrong. The question itself is wrong. Because if you posit that God is all powerful and all knowing, has all authority, right? And then you have the word genocide by definition, which is the complete taking out of a certain group of people, right? To annihilate them, right? What makes genocide so egregious is not really the taking of life, is your inability to bring it back. Let's say you had the power to bring back 4,000 people you took and able to bring them back. It can't be genocide by definition. It's got to be another word. So if God is all powerful, all knowing, to me, the sentence of genocide within the same phrase as God just didn't fit.
Yeah.
Because
I don't.
If he has the authority to take that life, if you posit he has the authority to take that life, he can't be genocidal. But even if he had the authority, he has the authority to take it, he can bring all of that life back.
And on
any basis he wants.
Yeah.
Separate. So the definition of genocide just didn't fit the question itself. I wasn't trying to be, difficult with the professor, but sometimes answering questions without doing the work on the question leads into other things that you're not really answering the question.
So it's time to circle up.
Yeah, it's time to circle up. Let's circle up.
Circle up with the professor.
Yeah. It's really so. Even like the sense of arbitrary. God is arbitrary. Well, God can't be arbitrary. Can't make arbitrary decisions.
Yeah.
Why? Because the definition of arbitrary by nature means that you have somebody else present with that by their presence. You're making an arbitrary decision whether they're equal to you or not. But if God was always there, who is he being arbitrary to? I was like, he can't.
You can't ask that
There's
question.
Nobody is equal and nobody present.
Yeah.
So every decision you make cannot be arbitrary. So I think that's what, philosophy helped me in seminaries. Like, do some work on the question before you rush in to answer the question, because sometimes the question may not be
a good question.
Good question. Just to do the work on the question.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
And we have a responsibility to recognize bad questions. Yeah.
Or questions are not complete, or the words that are in there. What do they really mean? Do they define?
Right.
Do they fit well with what you're trying to?
Yeah. In pursuit of truth.
In the pursuit of truth.
Yeah. Wow. That's cool.
Awesome.
Well, I think this is a good place to wrap it up.
Yeah.
We got the coups in, the food.
Oh, the coups.
The
Don't
coups
do
and
a coup, man.
The coups and the food.
The coups and the food.
Podcast name.
3 hours and 1 minute.
Yeah, we've covered 3 hours, but I feel like with Reuben, we can go more.
Yeah, that more Africa, like what they call it, the coup corridor. Mali, that's the coup corridor. And just keep, we pray, keep Chad in mind. We're going through a really difficult situation right now with my parents there and other people, because you never, with the political climate in that whole area, like Sudan, South Sudan, Chad, you have Niger, Burkina Faso. You never know when something's going to pop off.
Yeah.
Like it is sometimes a powder keg. And the slightest thing, an involvement of people who make decisions higher than this room, put a lot of people into jeopardy. And that's where your question is, that we have to be, we're solely dependent on a higher power for those things, because there's things we can't do, right? You can't go into that room and change people's minds. It's got to be somebody who's higher beyond us, who can create conviction. Because the people who, in any situation, the people who suffer the most are the people on the ground. They will feel the brunt of decisions that were made outside of their purview.
That's it. What's that saying? It's like when the rich sneezes, the poor die from pneumonia.
Yeah.
I've never heard that saying.
It's something like that. It's something like that.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
It's Whiskey Bro fact check.
That's right.
Yeah.
100%.
Well then, well wishes to your family.
Before we leave, so you're the second person that I know of,
the mic, man.
that I know of that spoke more languages than English. So the first one we had on here, she spoke Spanish, and we got her to say, "Thank you for listening to the Whiskey Bros" in Spanish. Could you do that in French?
Well, I should have started out like that because I wanted to invite any French speaker. So I do that, and I say, alors mes amis qui parlent français, je voulais vous souhaiter, d'abord vous inviter à cette émission de Whiskey Bros. C'était vraiment un plaisir d'être avec vous. J'espère qu'il y aura une autre occasion de venir parler avec vous. Et je te remercie beaucoup, tout le monde qui a pu suivre cette podcast. Les gens de West Texas sont des gens qui sont très bien. Ils sont très gentils. Ils sont très accueillantes. Merci beaucoup et bonne nuit.
Awesome.
Oui, oui.
Oui, oui.
That's such a sexy language.
It is such a romantic language. How would you say in Gambai then?
Oh man, you're gonna kill me and embarrass me with my Gumbai friends.
Just say,
I just say hello.
just say-
Lafia.
Lafia?
Ito banwa.
Jambanwa.
Yeah. So how are you? Ito
Okay.
banwa, mito maje.
What
So,
about,
maje? Like I.
Thanks for listening to the Whiskey Bros.
Okay, that one is a little bit
That's too
difficult for
hard,
me.
yeah.
Yeah, that you Gumbai is such a even like with my Gumbai family, the ones who come from the village, they're always getting on me because and they're getting on my parents. Like, why don't you teach them? And and you know how people think, everybody should speak your language, especially the old school
Yeah,
people. Why don't you
yeah.
teach them and everything?
There's
But
no forgiveness.
there's
from
no
them.
forgiveness for that. But
That's awesome.
all right.
Well, man,
yeah.
Reuben,
Thank
it's
you,
been
guys.
great.
It's great.
Yeah.
To all
appreciate the
the
opportunity.
new listeners from Chad, thanks for
Yes.
listening in. Hopefully, the
From
Whiskey Bros,
Africa too,
Yeah.
we gotta include all
Yeah.
that,
the
so.
vast continent of Africa. Maybe we'll get to visit listeners.
I
Over
feel like
there.
there should
We
be a call to action. Like, what's the call to action?
We go to Africa.
At least go eat some African food.
African
Start
food.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if you guys have any, well, even with African food, to invite, someone who could maybe provide a meal and do,
that would be
30,
awesome.
40 minutes on what food is and the culture around it right in this spot.
Yeah.
I mean, I've
Yeah.
tasted,
Heck yeah.
wanna,
I would love that. And
something like that.
to not ask for a fork.
yeah,
Don't
eat with
do
your
that.
hand.
Yeah,
with your
You gotta do the
hand.
whole
Hands.
traditional thing of washing your
That's right.
hands and eating,
I love it.
That's
great.
absolutely right.
Awesome.
Well, it's been a great chat
been a
with
blast.
you, Reuben. Thank you so much. And I'm pretty sure we'll have you on again. There's more to talk
it.
about. I
Yeah.
feel like there's a whole lifetime of history of yours to bring out to the table. So
Yeah, thank you.
I think we'll have you on again in the future.
I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Awesome,
sir.
guys.
And with that,
All right.
good night.
Adios.
You've been listening to the Whiskey Bros Around the Table. Gracias por convivir con los hermanos Whisky.